Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. It's your DC Spotlight for the week of June 24th, 2026. Monster week from DC. Huge week. There's 17 books.
Crazy.
Uh, 18 if you want to include the work in progress reprint of um, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which opens up this coming weekend. Even more if you want to count other reprints, which there were some books that were reprinted this week that I didn't even realize had sold out. So yeah, huge week. If you missed out on some of the things like Ryan North's uh, first few issues on Flash or the first couple issues of Firestorm, this is your week where you can go and pick them up. So yeah, huge week. That being said, I thought it was a pretty strong week as well. There's some really great books this week. Absolute Superman finally returns. Been looking forward to that. But even going down all the way to the end, 17 books. I pretty much enjoyed everything. Now, something has to be ranked last, obviously, and there were a few books where, I'll have some nitpicks here and there, but overall, it felt like a really strong week. But that being said, we've talked about it before. When DC was in that sweet spot of 10 books every week, it was nice. Having 17 books, it didn't necessarily feel like a chore to read them because, like I said, for the most part, everything was good. But yeah, 17 books is just a lot. So, how do you feel about the week overall, Rocky?
Well, there's like I said, there's 17 books, and I figured. I actually told you earlier that there was top 8 I really enjoyed. I'm going to expand that to 10, but there were 7 that I thought were good, but not great. and hey, and I said good. I never said bad. I said good, not great. So there you go. That's just how much I'm enjoying DC. How we're both enjoying DC this last few years. And just as a quick aside, I was looking back at some of my past videos, and at the end of 2022, when we were reviewing comics, at the end of 2022, my review of my top 20 DC titles that I did. The title of my video was top 20 DC. Yes, there are some good ones. That's how bad 2022 was in my mind. But I mean, I had to struggle to find I came up with a list. But the difference that just the last few years have made with DC coming up with that Absolute and their market share and just comic books in general, just the overall energy and the feel and the excitement of collecting comics between Image and DC and the indie market. And even Marvel now is starting to pick up a little bit. So it's a good time.
Yeah, I sort of feel like Marvel had nowhere to go but up. But yeah, they've had some recent successes, like things that are definitely worth reading. But yeah, I agree that the engine that is Absolute keeps on churning. People are still excited. So I hope everybody's checking out the Comic Source Weekly. I go over the numbers. I do a countdown of the previous week. So the one that came out this last Saturday, and hopefully it will continue to come out on Saturdays. Give you guys a couple days to get your FOC orders in for Monday. But I was talking about one of the things about what hit this previous week. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not going to be 100% accurate with that. That being said, the first Comic Source Weekly I did, my predictions for what were hot that week. Then I got the numbers for Comic Source Weekly episode 2, and it turns out I was dead on 5 for 5. I don't expect that to continue, but it was nice out of the gate. But now, much like Marvel, I have nowhere to go but down. So anyway, hope you guys are all checking that out. Again, reviewing all the news for the week, talking about the books that hit for that week, in my opinion, for various reasons. And I talk about what I use for my criteria, and then going over the Prana bestseller list, the top 10 of the top 400 books. And then, of course, final order cutoff. So, again, hope everybody's checking that out. Last week was a huge news. Last 2 weeks were huge news weeks. So far, it's only Monday as we're recording this, but so far this week has been much lighter on news, which, as we ramp up to San Diego Comic-Con, the news starts coming fast and furious because people want to get their announcements out before San Diego, which is so weird to me. Like it used to be, all the news came out at San Diego. But now, so much news comes out at San Diego, and it's news that it's not necessarily comic centric, movie and TV stuff, or whatever. So then the publisher shifted to wanting to get all their news announced the week before San Diego, so it doesn't get lost in the San Diego noise. And now it's kind of swinging back the other way, since the amount of movie and television news announced at San Diego has diminished over the years. So it's an interesting balancing act.
Well, we're
When
hoping
you,
to get some next level. The next level DC titles will be announced at San Diego, won't they? In terms of the
yeah, I mean,
creative teams and
yeah,
stuff. Right.
yeah, that'll most likely be announced there. But I wouldn't be surprised if we got it a little ahead of time. But that might be the case. Like sometimes, same thing will be at New York, right? Where we'll like the press release will go out to all the outlets like before anything is announced, and it'll be embargoed, and then you're supposed to drop it like right after the panel or what have you. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be some smaller announcements like that. So we'll see. But a lot of times it's DC and Marvel. They're still going to get news. Most of the when I talk about announcements, it's some of the smaller publishers that don't have such a big spotlight that try to get out and get their announcements out in front of San Diego. So it's going to be a different San Diego this year. No Rocky, no Steve. I'm sad.
Yeah, well,
Sad.
I'm sad too, but it's a budget and everything else. But
Oh yeah,
you know, it, one day, it'll happen again someday.
yeah, no doubt. So anyway, yeah, I was traveling last week for work. And so I wasn't in my local comic shop, but it was different to be in some other comic shops on Wednesday and hear some of the things that people were talking about. Specifically, titles I heard people talking about were the Superman Father of Tomorrow, Nightwing, and the Avengers Armageddon event were kind of the things that people were talking about. So,
Interesting.
um, z- if you've never been to Houston, Texas, 0 out of 10, I do not recommend. Apologies to anybody listening that lives in Houston, but y'all, as they say in Houston, y'all got nothing but humidity and highways. I've never been in a place with so many highways in my life. It was insane. Every half mile, there's an on ramp, an off ramp, or an exchange that has at least four different directions. Two highways coming together in two different directions, or more, because it's more than two highways going in multiple directions. And I like so much to the point where everybody's constantly changing lanes to get over and do this and do that and whatever. So it just makes driving there like a nightmare to the point where I was like, why is it like this? And I went down the rabbit hole like, why does Houston have so many highways? And I found out Houston has more highway miles per capita than anywhere else in the United States. And it's because they didn't have any zoning laws, and they still don't have like the normal zoning laws that most places have. So it kind of just they built willy nilly all these little pockets, and then they had to connect them all. So it's crazy. And as much as I say 0 out of 10, don't go there. I almost kind of want everyone to go there and drive on their highways just once, just to experience it. Because if you haven't done it, you won't understand. You won't understand. It's crazy. So anyway, just a little bit of my week last week. Yeah, humidity and highways. So let's go ahead and dive into the books for this week. Kicking it off with a book that is in both of our top five for both Rocky and I, and a book that um, I've really been enjoying. I mean, I think that I'm pretty sure that I've said this before, and I think Rocky has agreed with me that Tom Taylor's done a lot of different work at DC, but for me, this is the best work he's ever done at DC. So, Detective Comics number 1100, written by Tom Taylor, Mikel handling the pencils and the color, but he has an inker this time, and it does make a difference. Norm Ratman is on inks, and Wes Abbott is on letters. Now, I love Mikel art, but being that he was coloring his own stuff, it didn't look as sharp as it normally does. I still loved it, but it was noticeable. So I love that Norm Ratman is getting some inks down because it really sharpened up the art. I really really enjoyed this. We're starting to get a little bit more of the kind of the backstory, a little bit more of the sort of the mystery, I guess you'd say, of Prion and who he is and who this girl is that's been uh, pretty prevalent, pretty big part of the story over the last few issues. She shows up at Prion's grave and what have you. But I love the way that Taylor has structured this story, just in terms of having the trio of Black Canary and Oliver Queen and Batman at that gravesite, and us not and we see the tombstone from behind, so we don't know who it is. And then, the girl shows up and what have you, and we're not sure, like, what's she doing there? And then we find out it's Prion, and we don't know who Prion is, right? Like, this is a new character, but we're starting at the end of his story in a way, because we're at his gravesite. There's not more story to tell of him except, to go back and flashback and to talk about, hey, this event in the early days of Batman's career in Gotham City when he was a little bit of a team up with Oliver Queen and Black Canary, and then Prion, even to the point where they're workshopping names of what they could call themselves. So I really enjoyed the structure of the story, even with it bouncing back between the two different timelines, and it's been really interesting. And Taylor knows when to inject a little bit of humor here and there, with Batman doing his famous disappearing act, and then Black Canary kind of almost one-upping him in a way by disappearing when he's in the middle of talking. So there's just a lot to like. This issue didn't stand out for me in terms of like an oh my god moment, but just the highest quality storytelling and building on what has come before. So I mean, this is the way you do it. I talk all the time about not every comic can be, dialed up to 11. You need the contrast where, things kind of settle. You get what we call setup issues. You're kind of moving the characters around and putting them into a place for the payoff of the following issue. But even that being said, with this being a little bit of a setup with kind of moving things around and revealing a little bit more about Prion and who this girl is, it's still done really, really well. It's still compelling. It still feels like you get a big chunk of story. And for me, having the Mikel Janin art is just like, man, he is one of my favorite. He really is. His art is so clean. And when I talk about various art styles, Adrian Gutierrez or Jorge Corona, Carmine Di Giandomenico, where their art style is not clean lines, but it can still work, especially based on Rafael Albuquerque's another one. Based on, the type of story and the tone of story, it can still work and I still enjoy it. But then I get something like this where it is such clean lines and such clean art. And this is a complete subjective thing. But like, if you want to know the art styles that I enjoy, like a perfect example of an art style that I enjoy when I talk about clean lines, clean art, it's this kind of thing where everything, I'm never wondering what's going on in the panel. The art never pulls me out of the story. I'm never trying to figure out what's going on. I love it. It's gorgeous. There's always backgrounds, even if sometimes they're not the most detailed in terms of, I mean, what's there is detailed, but sometimes there might not be a lot in the background. But man, I just love his art. It's so good. So yeah, a no-brainer top 5 for me for sure. All right. What are your thoughts, Rocky?
Well, you nailed it in terms of Tom Taylor's storytelling. It's excellent. We've said before, this is probably his best DC mainstream work. Outside DC, I think his Injustice series, of course, that's where he really made a name for himself. Sort of like the Elseworlds, the Injustice, arguably the best comic book series of the 2000s. Or the 2010s was Injustice. But in any event, I like that the mystery of this young girl she's actually a Princess Arabella. We get answers here, because one of the things that I thought was baffling last issue is, this young assassin girl, almost holds her own. And successfully tries to kill Green Arrow and Batman. Almost succeeds, but fails. And she's told by the voice by her by the people that are controlling her, telling come back. You can't fight these two Justice League members on your own. She's extremely confident. And then we thought, how in the hell did she make her way back to Black Canary? How did she know what Black Canary was? Well, it's because she was playing possum, and it's discovered here that she's of two minds. She's basically mind controlled, or I guess she's taken over by somebody else's, like, in possession of her actions. And she's both, she's both Prion's daughter, and that's probably the good side of her. But then she also has this dark side, this other half that somebody's taken control of, that controls her actions when she's an assassin. And so it's something that, there's such a great scene when she intentionally goes to Black Canary, where Black Canary is hiding out, and then of course tries to kill Black Canary. Lots of action. Green Arrow, Batman warning Black Canary, don't let her touch you, and Black Canary holding her own. The action is epic, awesome. We see the skill levels of Green Arrow, Batman, Black Canary, this young assassin, this Princess Arabella. Also, we see the quality of the character of Prion in a flashback about just how, he was really a genuinely nice guy. It's almost to the point where I could accuse Prion of maybe almost being a little bit kind of a convenient Mary Sue or a Gary Sue. He seemed almost too good to be true. He's got a high moral fiber. He's almost equal to the level of Batman. He's really, really good. Like, I'm not calling him a Gary Sue, but he's borderline there. Like, he's almost too good to be true. Like, in the past, this guy just shows up and he's this good. And so Tom Taylor's, I think he's playing it. I think it's a little bit heavy-handed how great this Prion was, and now we know Prion eventually dies, and we heard here that apparently Black Canary may have had something to do with his death. Maybe even she feels guilty for even having potentially have killed him. So there's, Tom Taylor's doing a really good job of continuing to build the mystery through these flashbacks and present-day scenes. Excellent. You mentioned the Mikel Janin art. The coloring's fantastic by Ratmond. Again, easily in my top 5, and I got to tell you, with 17 comic books this week to make our top 5, that's quite a feat.
Yeah, a couple things. So it's Norm Ratman on inks, not the
Inks.
colors.
Sorry.
Yeah. And as far as her, I don't think she's really a princess. She even says to Black Canary when Black Canary shows up, they tell me I'm a princess in exile, but I think my grandmother's just telling me, a fairy tale. So we'll have to wait and see if she's truly a princess or not. Because that could be the case. It could not be the case. But it is interesting. And I'm going to be curious to find out, because again, at first it seemed like you were saying that her body was being taken over by someone. So is she like brainwashed and controlled and being controlled? And maybe the reason she's so good is, I don't know, it could be something like, it could even be like a computer program that's maximizing her potential, right? Or is it a split personality thing, which is kind of what Batman was saying. They've portioned off a portion of her brain or whatever, and she's like two people in one of them being really formidable or not. So and the hints of Prion having been in the same situation, her father, and him trying to escape that when we see the flashback. So I wasn't necessarily going to say that she was Prion's daughter, but now reminder, everybody, spoilers, because that was part of the mystery. But fantastic covers. The one you have up in the middle there is by Dave Johnson. There's another one. The one that's behind you is the main cover, and then the one that's behind me is Kevin Nolan. And then there is Angel Sorlazano does a Pride variant that has Tim Drake on the cover. But man, I think I typically order the main cover because I'm such a Mikel Janin fan. But
yeah,
I'll be tempted to pick up that Dave Johnson cover. I definitely don't need 2 copies because again, I'm so out of room right now. I was sorting some books this weekend and realizing how little room I have again. But man, that Dave Johnson cover is a banger as well. All right, up next, this book did not make my top 5. I don't think it made the top 5 for Rocky either. But that being said, it's not completely without redeeming qualities. It does have at least one thing that I'll say 2 things that I really enjoyed. So it's Bizarro Year None, issue number 2. It's Eric Carrasco and Kevin Smith. Yes, that Kevin Smith as writers. Nick Patera is the artist. We've got Michael Garland on colors, and then Dave Sharp on letters. So again, didn't make my top 5. Didn't make Rocky's top 5 either. But anything you want to add before I give my few thoughts, Rocky?
Yeah, I thought this was I enjoyed this much better than the first issue. And that's understandable. The first issue, I could understand why Kevin Smith had to spend the first issue doing setup. Because at first I was a little bit disappointed in the first issue because I thought, I don't want a Perry White, Jimmy Olsen story. What's going on here? Like, why? Like, this is a Bizarro story. Where's Superman? And the reason why, and it's really told this issue, is this really is a sort of a Bizarro origin story. And it's Perry White, and I don't know it's interesting that this is not advertised. This is not as advertised as a Vertigo series, and it's not advertised as Black Label. It has a DC. So I'm assuming this is the mainstream DC line. I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, that this is a new Bizarro origin or a new take on Bizarro that's going to be essentially the new Bizarro origin for the mainstream DC universe. And it's essentially it's Perry White and Jimmy Olsen sort of trapped on this Bizarro square world, and they are figuring out for the first time. They're putting the pieces together, trying to understand this Bizarro world. They're trying to understand what happened, and they're interacting with Bizarro, and they're trying to figure out and piece together what's going on, and they're sort of piecing together. And in fact, Perry White even uses the example of silly putty, that when you take silly putty and you stick it to something and you look at the image, it's backwards. And so that's how he's describing this, how it is on Bizarro World. Everything seems to be backward. And there's even hints of slowly people starting to speak in the traditional Bizarro speak, which we really haven't seen yet in this series. So something's going on. We're not sure what it is. There's even a Lois Lane iteration in here that appears to always figure out what's going on, that Bizarro is very, he has an objective here, and he's trying to replicate something from a newspaper, from a newspaper. He's trying to reconstruct the world just from a Daily Planet newspaper, and that's why you end up with all these shenanigans and this. Frankly, a lot of the humor sort of flows from that, in very clever ways. And I'll give Kevin Smith some credit here. So I'm actually enjoying this story. If this would have been a 10, I gotta say, if this was only a 10 comic book week, this might have come in at number 5 for me. I actually enjoyed this. As it turns out, this came in at number 9 for me, and out of 17, that's pretty good. So I thought it was good. I will say that this has elevated itself on my interest level in terms of interest, in terms of where this might be going, and if it's something new. And I just want to, as a final point, I'm surprised maybe that this isn't like, why couldn't this be DC level, next level? This feels like a next level Bizarro to me, or at least a reinterpretation of him. But I'm just throwing that out there. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't say Elseworlds. It doesn't say Black Label. You're 100% right. But this is not... I would be shocked if this is mainline. Like, this is... We just had a Bizarro story in World's Finest, and it is not this.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is going to stick beyond this series in terms of, what's going on. This is a more malevolent Bizarro. I mean, Bizarro that we've had, most recently, it's been more of a... he's just not that intelligent kind of thing. It's a corrupted Superman, in terms of making a copy, and then it, in a way gets corrupted. So who knows? I mean, we've had so many stories. We even had it in Superman recently, Joshua Williamson with the clone, and then the clone of Lex and what have you. So, yeah, I don't think this is necessarily the main line Bizarro, because this Bizarro seems to have ill intent, like sort of good intentions to begin with, in terms of it's a different dimension as opposed to the Bizarro we saw in World's Finest. It's a planet out there in space, right? This one, they go through a portal. It's a different dimension. So I think it's a different Bizarro, but he does want to make a copy, but then he gets frustrated that he can't. He just doesn't have the ability to make good copies, like you were saying. Everything's backwards with the silly putty, or everything is messed up. And that's frustrating him to the point where there's something wrong with him, where he's killing these Lois Lanes. He keeps creating them over and over, but they don't seem to work. And now, whatever it is, whatever magic or abilities or energy it is that, when he kills these people, they leave like this white matter behind that's kind of mysterious. Bizarro himself seems to be affected with it. It looks like toward the end of this issue, he's starting to change to that sort of white chalky skin, because we mentioned that in the first issue, why he's not. But I mentioned a couple things that are working. So the Nick Pitara art is awesome. I love the art. I love his style. I love the detail he puts in. And the other thing is, it's nice to see Perry White. I mean, Jimmy Olsen is the editor-in-chief, and Perry White gets to just be a reporter. Low on the totem pole reporter that has to go get coffee or whatever. But he's also out there investigating, trying to solve. And it's always great. I always love stories where it's a throwback. And usually when we get these, it's a flashback to Perry White when he was, a reporter way back in the day. And he's investigating, and it's Lois Lane-esque, right? Like this, part of the reason she's as good as she is that, Perry was her mentor. And so even though it's the older Perry here, he's like a dog with a bone when he gets a story, much like Lois. So seeing that aspect of Perry White, I really, really enjoy. That being said, I'm not a Bizarro fan. This came in at 15 for me. Even in a week of 10, this is not going to be in my top five. But I am curious to see where Eric Carrasco and Kevin Smith take this story. But again, I would be shocked if this turns out to be kind of the mainstream Bizarro. So as far as variant covers, that one that you have right there really stood out to me. The one that's in the middle. I thought it was just a fantastic cover. It's by Ibrahim Mustafa. And then Martin Morazzo has the cover that's behind me. And then obviously the main one that's behind Rocky is by regular series artist Nick Pitara. So yeah, great covers. I'm not buying this. I'm not going to buy this, but if I was, that Mustafa cover, I mean, that's just fantastic. Superman with the Bizarro World cube there. It just looks great. All right, moving on. Another book that is not in my top five, but that I am enjoying. It's Harley Quinn. We're up to issue 63. Continues to be written by Elliot Kalan. We continue to have art by Carlos Javier Olivares. And this is a perfect example of what I was talking about before with art that's not super clean, but it suits the story that's being told. Marisa Louise on colors, Lucas Catoni on letters, and it certainly is that same sort of muted color palette that we've had throughout this run of Elliot on Harley Quinn, which I don't necessarily think serves her as a character really well, but for this particular story, it's fine. But here's the thing: like, as much as there is humor here at times, where I'm kind of chuckling, it's not sort of the laugh out loud zany humor that you normally would associate with Harley Quinn. And this issue was a little lighter on the humor side. It was a little bit of a darker issue, and so like this was a book. I read it and then I had to get up and like walk her. I couldn't read this and then just dive right into the next DC book when I was reading it. I had it. I don't want to go so far as to say reading this feels like homework, but it's sort of a heavy book with what's being told. And I do really like the secondary character, the police officer that's after her, Harley Quinn, that has infected her with his monochromatic whatever disease that he has, and she's starting to turn monochromatic. He's just a really, really interesting character, and I kind of like that power, that ability that he has. But all that being said, it's like reading this book, it's again, after I finished reading, I had to take a break from it. So I don't know what that says about the story, but it's definitely a different feeling Harley Quinn than we've had in a long, long time. And as much as I don't care for the zany Harley Quinn,
Yeah.
I do feel like more people than not with Harley kind of prefer that version. But this is just really different. Now, Rocky and I have gone on record of saying that we prefer more realistic. Like when we talk about my favorite Harley Quinn story, I'm talking about Joker Harley Criminal Sanity, which is Black Label, where
Yeah.
Harley is she's just a very capable criminal profiler, and there's no zaniness or humor to that at all. She just is what she is, and she's awesome. And the art is also really great in that book, so that helps out as well. We're supposed to be getting a sequel of that, but I haven't heard any news of it in a couple of years. So anyway, it's interesting because I go back to that Bruno Redondo story that we had in the Harley Quinn Black, White, and Red, where even within the story, it got very meta with Harley saying DC doesn't know how to use me. There's all these different iterations. And it's sort of, you could say the same thing with Batman to an extent, right? I've heard many creators say this. Well, what they love about Batman is the character is so malleable and resilient that you can sort of tell any kind of story with Batman. And the same thing holds true with Harley, but with Harley it feels more forced.
Oh,
And
for
I think
sure.
I
Yeah.
think the reason for
Yeah.
that is because when you talk about telling any kind of story with Harley, they lean into it so hard, right? Like if you talk about the era that in comics that really made Harley super, super popular, it was the Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner run, right, with Chad Hardin on art. and that leaned far, far, far into the zany. And then I talk about something like Criminal Sanity, where we're leaning as complete opposite from the zany as you can get. And then we're talking about this, and it's trying to sort of walk the tightrope in a way, but then it doesn't do either of them particularly well. Same thing, you could talk about the Stephanie Phillips run, you could talk about the Tinny Howard run, and what have you. And so, yeah, it's sort of like Bruno Redondo's right. They don't know who Harley's supposed to be, but instead of leaning one direction slightly or another slightly, that they lean too far, and then all of a sudden she feels fractured, if that's the right way to put it. So in a way, I've talked about enjoying this run a lot more, the Elliot Kalan run, a lot more than previous runs. I sort of feel like, again, he's trying to do the thing that they should have been doing all along, where she's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But then at the same time, it's like, does it work? What are fans' expectations of Harley? I mean, just even the fact there's so many different eras and people are fans of different eras, I think it makes it a little bit tough. So anyway, doesn't make my top 5. Let me give my ranking. I think it came in definitely toward the bottom. Yeah, it came in at 14 for me. So,
Yeah.
all right. Any quick thoughts to add, Rocky?
Yeah, it came in at number 16 for me. I'm just not feeling it. I've just to give an example of just how out of whack DC editorials. Harley Quinn, I think, is frankly a lost cause at this point. The sad part is there's a scene in this issue where there's a flashback that shows Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, and Harley Quinn broken up. Now, if you've been reading Poison Ivy, which has been amazing under the scripts of J. Willow Wilson. I mean, literally, Harley Quinn. Part of the reason why I like Janet from HR as being a love interest for Poison Ivy is that Harley Quinn has been so poorly managed by DC editorial in terms of the direction that they're taking her, that I no longer see her, frankly, as a believable love interest for Poison Ivy, who's been actually written with a high degree of verisimilitude by J. Willow Wilson. And for this, she's I still don't understand the absurdity of her being this Hark Knight nonsense. And then there's a flashback where apparently there's a flashback to Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy breaking up, which is a pretty significant moment in Poison Ivy. We're supposed to believe it's a significant moment, I think, in the mind of Harley Quinn, but it just doesn't. I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it because this comic, in the pages of Harley Quinn, there's so much absurdity every issue. And don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed some of the absurdity. I love Aletha Klang, who shows up here, Harley Quinn. I think she's, I don't know, for a crazy person, she's gone even more crazy, and she's being chased, and she goes to Aletha Klang. She wants to be saved, and she's asking for help. And so, and then she's remembering breaking up with Poison. So I think this is supposed to try to illustrate Harley Quinn really losing it and hitting rock bottom. But because Harley Quinn, and this isn't even the fault of the writer, Elliot Kalan, who's done, I think, a good job of being as funny as he can under the circumstances. And he's created some new and interesting characters. But she's got too many eggs and too many baskets of different characterizations and iterations that I don't know which way is up with this character. And it's hard for me to get invested in either one. And so now when she's trying to suck and blow at the same time, I'm supposed to take her seriously in the pages of Poison Ivy while reading a series like this that approaches her in a very diametrically different manner. Elliot Kalan is trying to balance, is trying to juggle this, and there's only so much he can do. There's only so much you could do to make these stories compatible. But that's just an example of my frustration with the character. It doesn't mean the stories aren't great, and there's an audience for this type of story. But I find it's not particularly compatible with mainstream DC. But that's just, as I said, as you and I both say, this isn't necessarily a comic that, we've been up and down on quite a bit, while at the same time I can recognize, a decent story when I see it. And we got a good writer, and the art, it suits the style of the story being told. But it's frustrating to me because I would like more compatibility with Poison Ivy, for example, so I could enjoy both titles as opposed to, Harley Quinn trying to please everyone, and it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe G. Willow Wilson should be writing both of them. I am enjoying the Hark Knight, but I'm enjoying the Hark Knight version of Harley just because she's more serious, and that's the version that I prefer. So, All right, variant covers. Terry Dodson on that one with the polka dots. David Nakayama, that one that's the Pride one from Stephen Byrne. David Nakayama on the one that's behind Rocky, and then the main cover by Brant and Stein. All right, what's up next? Okay, Absolute Superman number 20. Again, this was delayed, so it's been a while. You can just look at the other Absolute title that we're going to review this week, which is Absolute Wonder Woman 21. Now, at one point, these were on the same number, and now we're a month off. We're an issue off. So not a big deal. I don't know what the delay was. Maybe it was art. Maybe it was scripts. Who knows? But Jason Aaron is still the writer. Rafael Sandoval is still the artist. But we have a couple of fill-in pages from Vicente Fuentes, pages 8, 11, 12, 14, and 15. Ulysses Areola on color, and then Becca Carey on letters. So who knows? Maybe Rafael Sandoval got sick or what have you, and he needed a little bit of help. But this is continuing the story of Superman and Hawkman fighting against the Absolute Black Adam. Reign of the Superman, Part 3, Up, and is the name of the story. And yeah, no-brainer top 5 for me. So give us your thoughts on it, Rocky.
No-brainer top 5 for me too. You know, it's unfortunate that there seems to be more and more delays on Absolute Superman, but I got to tell you, if the delays are because they're waiting, I hope the creators are all healthy and everything, and that these are just minor hiccups. But I got to tell you. Not that I want any more delays, but how's that expression go? Well, it's worth the wait. I got to tell you, I feel that, if I have to wait to get stories this good, fantastic. This felt to me, this entire issue was just epic. What really surprised me here is that this isn't just a Black Adam story, or pardon me, King Shazam. This isn't just an Absolute Superman story, character arc in this issue. It's actually Steel, Absolute Steel, and there's also a reckoning and a redemption arc beginning for Absolute Hawkman, who admits that he's inspired by Superman. I mean, it's absolutely epic here. What I particularly love is that this whole issue is pretty much one glorified long battle sequence between, it's Hawkman and Superman and Steel trying to take down this King Shazam. They're trying to communicate with him, but they're ancient. They don't all speak. Absolute Hawkman speaks a little bit of ancient Egyptian because he's an archaeologist. Superman familiarized himself with the language. Steel knows a little bit because he's a genius. But still, I mean, King Shazam just, he's thinking that this is all, he was created by brainiacs. He thinks that he knows he's in the future somewhere, but he feels he's being manipulated again because he finally escaped. And they can't reason with him. Meanwhile, Superman, as you find out, their narration is great. A lot of the narration is from Hawkman, where you see that, you think Superman's getting his ass kicked, and he is, but it's also because he's saving people. And Superman is going out of his way to save people. So while King Shazam is causing all this havoc, Hawkman's causing all this havoc, and Steel battling King Shazam, Superman, not only is he in the midst of the battle, but he's also saving people's lives because this battle is literally taking place around the entire world. And at this point, I just want to make a mention about some of the criticisms of Absolute Superman. When this series first began, remember, Jace, you and I were talking about, we addressed some criticism that we heard other reviewers talking about, that, oh my God, in some of those early issues, Superman killed, Jor-El killed, Laura killed, it was a debate whether or not this Superman used lethal force. Well, if this hasn't been addressed again and again and again, that, it's almost as if Jason Aaron, he's making it absolutely clear. It's almost like he's speaking to all those naysayers. Hey guys, this is a guy that saves lives. Superman went through quite a bit. He was tempted to take a human life through that initial 2-story arcs with Ra's al Ghul and the Brainiacs. He was tempted to take a life. Now, not only does he not take a life or even contemplate it, but he goes out of his way to save everyone, and in epic fashion. And oh my God, I'm not going to, it's probably going to, people are going to think I'm engaging in hyperbole if I compare this to Avengers Endgame. And it probably is a little bit of hyperbole, but from considering that this is just a comic book and not a movie that took $300 million to make, there is the excitement, I can't believe the level of excitement I got when I watched Captain America, or call upon Thor's hammer in Avengers Endgame. That was a pretty epic and cool moment. There's a moment in here with Absolute Superman where he's invited by Hawkman to take up the mace and Steel to take his hammer. That is pretty freaking awesome. I loved it. That's all I'll say about it. But guys, good God, if I can't imagine where anybody who's listening to this isn't reading this title. But this is just a really great title. And there's also some really cool moments between Lois Lane and Talia, which are worth checking out too. So absolutely, this is my easy top 5, high recommend. And I didn't honestly. You mentioned the different artists. I didn't even notice there. Just I love the art. The art I thought was fantastic. This visually, this felt cinematic to me. I love this issue straight up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. If we have to have late issues, at least having them be this good kind of softens the blow tremendously. Because yeah, there's nothing not to like. I feel like this issue epitomizes who Absolute Superman is to a T. Because you're right, he goes out of his way. Hawkman, yes, the Absolute Hawkman it seems to be somewhat on a redemptive arc, and the fact that it's this young kid, this young Superman, who is inspiring him when he's been around forever and is kind of the old cynical, jaded character. There's power. There's power to that being called out. But even with that being said, even with Hawkman wanting to be a better person and kind of turn his back on the All Ghouls and go back to being a hero if he ever was one. Even with that, he's still like, no, you got to kill King Shazam. He's too powerful. It's the only way. And even then, despite all the destruction, despite everything that King Shazam has done in the very short time that he's been awake, Superman refuses to do that. It's powerful storytelling. And so to have that level of character work in an issue that's basically one big fight, that's special. That's special to be able to do that and still keep the momentum going where you feel like this issue is just action nonstop. You mentioned getting some moments between Lois and Talia, and that is still all action. The only pages we get that aren't action are at the very beginning, where Hawkman, we get a little bit of Hawkman and the poor choices he's made. Other than that, it's the fight. It's the fight that's taken these guys around the world, and it's incredible. And what Superman decides to do at the end, Rocky didn't spoil it. I won't spoil it either. But yeah, him wielding these weapons. Oh my God, it's absolutely amazing. It brings a smile to my face. This is everything that Superman should be as a character. It's amazing. The art is fantastic. I didn't actually notice that there was a fill-in artist either until I got to the end and saw the credits, and then I went back and I said, oh yeah, that is a little bit of a different art style. So kudos to the entire art team. They did a fantastic job. It's not always easy to kind of make it work together. I mean, again, if you're looking for it, you can tell that these are different artists. And Rafa Sandoval, who did the majority of it, did a fantastic job. Now Vicente Fuentes is mostly known as an inker, so I imagine that maybe Rafa just fell behind or what have you. But based on the strength of the pages that Vicente did, I'm like, man, I don't know. I get that you're an inker, but looks like you could do a book on your own. You could do a book solo. So anyway, that might not necessarily be in his wheelhouse because he did like 6 pages. It might have taken him 2 weeks. Who knows? Who knows? He might be really slow, but when it comes to doing full art as opposed to doing just inks. But yeah, this is incredible. This is like, what a return. I can't wait to see what happens next. Like the level of power that King Shazam or Absolute Black Adam has is just, it's crazy, the level of power that he has. And so you wonder, it's like, if can Superman convince him to be on their side? Do they have to put him back to sleep? Is he not somebody you can trust? Because what's the end game? It got me thinking to have, because if you can turn Absolute Black Adam or King Shazam to your side, then all these villains, everybody that Jack Grimm Joker has created, or whatever, they better watch their backs. what's
That's
the
right.
end game here for Absolute Universe? Are you eventually going to go up against Darkseid? And it's so funny to think about it, right? Is there even an end game now? Based on the incredible success of Absolute Universe, you don't think it's going to end anytime soon, and I don't think
Yeah.
so either. Like nobody would think that.
Yeah.
And then
And it's
immediately when oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I was just going to go off the beaten path that that he gets his power from apparently from a father box, and in the
Yeah,
mainstream DC universe, we always talk about the mother box, which is related to
yeah.
Apocalypse and Genesis world, and now it's like, what's the father box in the Absolute universe? What is that? Is that related to because the fact that he's Shazam and he gets his powers from the father box, and they Hawkman talked about, they made up these names of gods, these deities, so he doesn't, it's a suggestion that King Shazam doesn't get his powers from gods, and that it's a code word that initiates a father box, maybe a transfer of power from a father box or something. I don't know, it's still a mystery a little bit, where he gets his powers from. It's not really from gods, I don't think, but people can correct me in the chat. If anybody has a theory on King Shazam's powers, let me know. But I'm fascinated by the origins of this.
It kind of goes into what I was just going to talk about, in that this is a universe, Absolute Universe, that's powered by Darkseid's Omega energy, right? So his Darkseid is, in my mind, Darkseid is the father, and he himself, it's his energy that's powering these boxes and giving these incredible powers, as opposed to the mother box, which I think was always supposed to be linked to the source, the source wall and Jack Kirby stuff or whatever. And they're just highly advanced computers, basically, that were sentient. This is taking it one step further and being able to bestow power. But when I talk about, okay, well, what would be the end game? Eventually, you have to fight Darkseid, right? Can the Absolute Universe? What if Darkseid's defeated? We know there's only one Darkseid in all the DC multiverse, and what Scott Snyder and Joshua Williamson have done to expand the mythos of Darkseid and whatever is brilliant. We talked about it when we covered the All In special. So I look at it like this: like, you look at it two ways, like in terms of what they're doing in the story and what that means for the Ultimate Universe, and it's really cool with the Father Box and whatever. And if you're eventually going to fight Darkseid, you want somebody with King Shazam's level of power on your side. Like that could be the difference between winning and losing, right? But then you look at, let's take a step back and look at the success of Absolute Universe. I don't know that they would ever want to end it. It's doing so well, but never say never. The Absolute Universe, or the Ultimate Universe rather, at Marvel, the first go round, did really well also. And then they made mistakes, and eventually, and a lot of the mistake was they just moved too fast, which I worry about the Absolute Universe doing that. But then on the heels of that, of knowing, okay, it's been this huge success, and so I don't expect it to end anytime soon, I can't help but think, what if it wasn't a huge success, Rocky? What if it had completely flopped and they were winding it down already? What would that look like? Would that be the fight against Darkseid? We know there's another Darkseid event coming, probably in 2027. So it's really interesting, the fact that they built this entire Absolute Universe so critically on Darkseid. And not to say they haven't completely painted themselves into a corner. They can still have the Omega energy sustain it, even if Darkseid is defeated. Maybe Darkseid's defeated and he goes into some kind of state of suspended animation or whatever, and he's off the table for a while. But it's just interesting when you think about the possibilities of story wise, and we don't always consider the practical applications of how well something is doing sales wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, look at the Ultimate Universe, the current Ultimate Universe at Marvel is a perfect example with Jonathan Hickman, right? Like, my understanding is he had it in his contract. Maybe it wasn't written, maybe it was more of a handshake agreement or whatever, that Absolute Universe, or that Ultimate Universe at Marvel, the current one, that where it was happening in real time, right? Like every issue came out and they were a month apart. A month had passed in the actual story. That it was going to be finite, that it was going to end. He was only going to do it for a short period of time. And now who knows? Like it was also a success. They didn't seem like Marvel necessarily wanted to end it, but they wanted to honor that agreement with Hickman. He is their, kind of their flagship writer, what have you. And now they're coming out with this nightmare universe. I don't even remember what they're calling it. Midnight universe,
Yeah.
I think they're calling it. I've seen some pages, I've seen some art. It does not look good. Again, I'm not a horror guy or whatever, but it is interesting. It is really interesting when you start factoring in, okay, what are you going to do story wise, and then the business part of it comes in and it affects what you might do. For all we know, they had an off ramp. They had an off ramp built. It wouldn't surprise me if DC had an off ramp built when Scott and Joshua Williamson first came up with this and said, okay, because you kind of have to, right? If it's a story that's this big and it launches a whole new line, like what if nobody shows up for this? How do we get out of it? How do we put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak? So I'm sure they had that. And even if it ended, like let's say, midway through next year, it starts to drop off, tremendously. It's still not going to be that same. They're still not going to use the same story. They might have to, tweak it or whatever, just because it's going to have gone on so long. So I just find it to be really interesting when you start thinking about the broader applications of what might happen with the Absolute Universe going forward, because it is an absolute, no pun intended, it is an absolute juggernaut. Like it is completely impacting the entire comic industry in terms of sales, right? Like there's a guy that writes articles for Bleeding Cool. His last name is Rodman. He owns Rodman Comics in somewhere in the Midwest, and he was talking about how just last week the other comic shop that's closest to him did not get their shipment of books in, so they didn't have Absolute Batman. And so in turn, all the people that didn't want to miss out on Absolute Batman went to his shop instead. He had his best sales day ever, because it basically had double sales because people couldn't get their Absolute Batman. And he mentioned, but they're coming in to buy Absolute Batman. He's like, they're picking up other books as well. They don't just buy Absolute Batman. They buy other books as well. And he's like, I didn't know what was going on. Like I was seeing all these new people that I had never seen before. And he's like, I try not to do this on New Comic Book Day because I'm so busy and I want to focus on the customers. But he's like, I checked my sales 2 hours after I opened, and I was already like above what a normal Wednesday is. Just 2 hours. He had the whole rest of the day. So it's not a surprise that he set a record. But that's the power of Absolute Universe. That's the power of Absolute Batman. It is like people are showing up for this. It's bringing in new readers. So
yeah, it is.
I mean, which is great. I love this. As people know, I don't love Absolute Batman, but there's no doubt that Absolute Batman is making a difference in comics. And for that, I'll be forever grateful that Absolute Batman exists.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's move on. Up next, we have Green Lantern number 36 from writer Jeremy Adams. Art by Iguara and Montos. Colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr. And letters by Dave Sharp. This is the same art team that we had last time. I feel like this... I don't know if these guys, if their art just doesn't gel for me or whatever, but I haven't been a fan of the art for the last couple of issues. Also, it feels like Romulo Fajardo Jr., maybe it's based on their art styles, where we're not getting it brightly colored. We're not getting it colored with bright hues like it has been, like Green Lantern had been since the beginning of the run. Also, I don't know, the story just didn't really grab me. I did enjoy seeing Jade and her relationship with Kyle Rayner. It's always great to explore that. So I did appreciate that. But this, I mean, I can't remember the last time I had an issue of Green Lantern that wasn't in my top 5, but this only came in at number 9 for me. So what do you think of it, Rocky?
This just missed my top 5. It came in at number 6 for me. Only because I'm a huge Kyle Rayner and Jade fan. I used to ship them. I just like them. So for that reason alone, Jeremy Adams and I think we've sort of like on the same wavelength here. I just think Jade is like hot. She's like she's period fanboy hot. She's, if you talk about, my favorite green skin superhero, it's not She-Hulk, it's Jade, okay? And that's just the way it is. And and I really enjoyed it. And I thought the story was fun. The idea here of Odyssey we almost got an Odyssey origin story here, because Odyssey, actually, we now discover that Odyssey wants to hide her identity. She has no problem changing her identity and even into becoming a movie star, so to speak, because she's clearly running from something. We don't know what Odyssey's running from. That will be revealed, but we almost got an origin story, but that was interrupted because of the of the shenanigans that happened in the comic. But I thought it was really good, and it was nice to see Kyle Rayner and Jade. There's no messing around. Often romance in comics, it's very, very slow going, but it's nice to see them rekindle the romance like pretty much right away, all in one issue. Thank you, Jeremy Adams, for doing that. And in a week, for all intents and purposes, for a 17 comic book week, for this to come in at number 6, pretty damn good. Thank you, Jeremy. and I enjoyed the art too. You know, a nice, sexy Jade compliments. Who's the artist here?
We have, yeah,
Iguara
Iguara and Montos.
and Montos.
Both.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
stuff.
So,
Good stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jade, I will admit, Jade looks good, regardless of the art style. But yeah, a couple different variant covers. The one in the middle there, Yasmin Putri, really fantastic. And then the one behind me is by, I think that's David Nakayama. Yeah, David Nakayama with Odyssey as well. So yeah, some great covers for sure. All right, up next we have Gotham Academy, first year, issue number 5. Story by Brendan Fletcher, Becky Cloonan, and Carl Kerschel. Script by Brendan Fletcher, art by Marco Ferrari, colors by Ava Dela Cruz. I'm not 100%, but I think this is a different artist than we've had on it before. I can't remember, to be honest. I didn't go back and look. Because I didn't enjoy the art as much in this issue as I've enjoyed it previously. But the story is interesting enough. I continue to be intrigued by Olive Silverlock. And obviously, I've mentioned before, I didn't read the first any previous volumes of Gotham Academy, so I'm not as invested or aware of as maybe some other Gotham Academy fans are. But this is interesting enough, like I said, but it is a bit of a setup issue, I think, for what is the final issue. I think this is a 6 issue. So
Yeah, it's the penultimate issue.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. So this came in at number 12 for me. I did enjoy it. Again, bit of a setup, but hopefully they can stick the landing. And I think that this, when you call it Gotham Academy first year, I think that is sort of a call out. Hey, this is an on ramp. If you haven't read Gotham Academy before, this is this is a prequel in a way. This is the beginning of the story in a lot of ways. And in that, I think it's been really successful because, again, I haven't read any of the Gotham Academy stuff previously, and I wasn't really interested in it, to be honest. And having read this, I'm much more inclined to go and read the previous Gotham Academy volumes than I have ever been before. So, and seeing Maps Maguchi, who I think is one of the kind of stars of it, one of the more popular characters,
Kyle.
because she's
Her brother Kyle is more in this particular series than his sister
no.
Maps.
I'm saying overall, Maps Maguchi is kind of the character from Gotham Academy that fans seem to like the most. Because we've seen her show up in we've seen her show up a bunch in different one shots and anthologies. And
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I don't particularly like. She doesn't do anything for me. Like I don't really. I'm like whatever. She's not a throwaway character by any means, but I'm also not invested in her. She's not somebody that resonates because I don't really identify with her because she's this little kid. But again, and I'm purely going on the fact that she's shown up and teamed up with Batman in a bunch of other stories, whether it be, Batman Urban Knights or Brave and the Bold or whatever. So she has a very, very limited role in this series. Like you said, it's her brother Kyle that has a much bigger role. So, even with that, even with that aspect of it, I'm still interested enough to want to go and check out Gotham Academy. Now, whether I actually get to it, that's a whole other story altogether. But I just say that to say I think this has done probably what they intended. But then on the other hand, it could have just been, well, we don't know where to take the characters going forward. So let's go back and do a flashback series. Because it is the challenge that always exists when you have characters that are set in a certain time frame, right? Like if you're telling the story of these kids and they're in junior high, for, lack of a better way to put it, how many years can you tell stories of them being in junior high, right? Like at some point, at least you don't have the problem that other mediums have, right? Like a TV show like 90210 when they're in high school and the actors are like pushing 40. And it's like, I don't buy this kid, this person as a teenager anymore. I never really did in the first place. And now it's really getting bad. So it's kind of funny, but at least comics doesn't have that challenge. But anyway, I am curious what Gotham Academy, longtime Gotham Academy fans think of this. So if you're somebody who's read Gotham Academy a lot and really enjoy it and familiar with all the characters, whatever, leave a comment down below. Let me know if this is working for you or not. I'm very, very curious about that. All right. Anything to add, Rocky, before we move on?
Yeah, Olive Silverlock is this issue is she was rendered unconscious last issue, and she was filled with a fear toxin. And this issue was basically she was having a nightmare. She's living a nightmare, but through that nightmare, it recites exactly what's happened from the first issue, pretty much. So it actually brought us up to speed, and she finally comes out of it, and she's in her nightmare, all her fellow classmates found out that her mother, who is the villain Calamity, who basically started a fire that killed a lot of people, and there's some speculation that perhaps her mother is innocent, and a lot of the reputation, she doesn't want to have her reputation ruined, but she's still close to Kyle, but a lot of it's taken place in her head, and and she's still unconscious at the end of this issue. Batman shows up to rescue her, and Tristan is there. He's the new sort of like the new Man Bat, the boy bat issue, so to speak, the teenage version of Man Bat. He cares for her, Olive, as well. And so what's going to happen next issue? How is it going to be resolved? What's the secret? What really happened to Olive's mother? What's going to happen to Olive Silverlock? Is her relationship with Kyle going to be salvaged, etc.? We'll have to wait to the final issue next issue. So, but no, I thought this was good. This came in at number 14 for me. It just had too much competition, quite frankly.
That's interesting. Yeah, I actually had it ranked higher than you. Any woo on that variant that's in the middle there, everybody.
Yeah.
All right, up next, this one just misses my top 5. It's Absolute Wonder Woman number 21, Friends and Neighbors part 1 of 2. Kelly Thompson is the writer. Dylan Snook is the artist, who's somebody I've never heard of before. Jordi Belair on colors, Becca Carey on letters. If you missed it, go make sure you watch the Comic Source Weekly every week, and you won't miss out on this news. But the 3 latest DC Next Level titles announcements included League of Superheroes, written by Joshua Williamson with art by Hayden Sherman. And while I was excited to hear that, because first of all, I love Legion of Superheroes. It was like one of the first DC titles that I bought ever, like not even monthly, but just bought. And I think Hayden is a fantastic artist and a fantastic choice. And the character designs we've seen are very different from any character designs we've seen before for Legion of Superheroes. And Hayden's done a fantastic job. We also know he's relatively fast. Is he fast enough to do 2 monthly books? I sort of have my doubts, right? And I hate the idea of Hayden Sherman leaving Absolute Wonder Woman. The Legion fan in me is very excited to have him on Legion. The Wonder Woman fan in me is very sad if he's going to be leaving Absolute Wonder Woman. And maybe they've tried to find an artist that has a similar style to him, because I think Dylan Snook does, but only kind of superficially. I didn't think that the rendering was as good as Hayden. Now, it could be that Dylan Snook, like I said, he's somebody that I haven't heard of before, so excuse me. Maybe he'll find his footing, maybe he'll improve, whatever. I mean, I talked about like Hayden has come leaps and bounds from when I first discovered his art, I think in 2018 or 2019. So no reason to think that Dylan Snook can't rise to that level of storytelling and rendering and what have you as well. But I just didn't feel like the art in this particular issue was as strong, and that kind of knocked it out of the top 5 for me. So that being said, it is in Rocky's top 5, so I'll let him discuss in more detail. I did very much appreciate the story, and we do have some hints for things that are coming, mostly with Wonder Woman getting a new magical arm in some way that's a mix of magic and machinery, and that's something that Hayden was talking about during a DC panel at Heroes Con, so that has me really excited. So I still love this book. I wish, honestly, that Mattia de Eloise was fast enough to do a monthly book.
No kidding.
Because,
yeah.
Oh my God. And he's somebody that, him and Kelly are fantastic collaborators. And that would be, even if he could do 8, but I think he's more the kind of just because his stuff is so detailed and so gorgeous, he's probably more the I can handle 4 to 6 issues a year as opposed to, 8, which is you really need 8 to 10 to be considered the regular artist on a book. So anyway, this made your top 5, Rocky. So take it away.
Yeah, it made my top 3, actually. I just continue to enjoy Absolute Wonder Woman because the story just, Kelly Thompson manages to do something here, which, we know that last issue, Wonder Woman, unfortunately, she had to leave the battle. She wanted to rescue, she was being tortured in Area 41 by Veronica Cale. She wanted to break out and to rescue Barbara. Who unfortunately is now captive, and she's really worried about that. So Wonder Woman's now back in hell because of the curse that Hades placed on her. She's got to spend 1 month in hell every year, and this is her 1 month, and so she can't return to reality, I guess, to man's world for at least 30 days. Well, she's worried that in those 30 days, Barbara could be killed by Veronica Cale or tortured or whatever the case might be. But she's got her own adventure, a new adventure in hell because her mother, Circe, has been kidnapped. And kidnapped by whom, she's not sure, but she discovers at the end that Hecate actually was involved in the abduction of her mother. And she's very, very... Now, why exactly is Hecate involved in the kidnapping of Circe? We don't know yet. We know that she whispered something to Hades. We know that something is up. We know that Absolute Wonder Woman, unlike the mainstream Wonder Woman, thank God, she is a little bit more, she holds her gods more accountable, and she's just a better character. She's more intelligent. She's more kick-ass. And that's what I love about this. I want to give Kelly Thompson credit for how she scripts Barbara Minerva, who we expect. I just sort of blindly assume that she's going to be the next Cheetah, and so here we have Barbara, who is being talked to by the cat god Ishkataga, who basically possesses you and changes you into the Cheetah. Now we know that that's the origin from the mainstream universe. That is, in the mainstream universe, that the god Ishkataga possesses Barbara Minerva and she becomes the Cheetah, and she can't control the possession. But in this case, I think Kelly Thompson is going to give us something different. It's very obvious here that Barbara is no pushover. She's quite intelligent. Even the cat god Eshkataga says to her, you're quite intelligent. You're not like the previous iteration. And she knows what fate potentially awaits her if she's going to be possessed. But there's something that you just know Kelly Thompson's got something up her sleeve. And it's not entirely clear to me that, that if, I think everyone's assuming that, when Wonder Woman doesn't show up for 30 days, Veronica Cale's going to try to manipulate Barbara and say, oh, look, Wonder Woman abandoned you, and to try to mind warp her, distort her mind and poison her mind so that when she gains these cheetah powers, she can be used and easily manipulated against Wonder Woman. That's a little bit cliche. I think it's going to be more complicated than that. And I trust that Kelly Thompson is going to, she's planted some seeds as to where this might be going. Anyways, I thought it was very well done. We also get some flashbacks. We get some flashbacks of the previous iteration of Cheetah, which I think are just, Priscilla. And so that's interesting because because at one point Barbara manages to actually sip some of the blood of the corpse of Priscilla that hasn't, for some reason, it hasn't rotted, it hasn't decayed, and she tastes the blood, and she can actually converse with the dead spirit of Priscilla, the previous absolute Cheetah. And it's very, very interesting, and it's very mystical. It's just something you would expect when we're dealing with gods and mysticism and magic, and we're dealing with that in the pages of Absolute Wonder Woman. So it just seemed to fit. And I really appreciated that. I like the fact that, Barbara doesn't need Absolute Wonder Woman by her side to be a compelling and interesting character. She's got her own agency and her own right, despite being the captive of Veronica Cale. And I don't think she's going to be quite the pushover that Veronica Cale thinks. And I really appreciated the way that Kelly Thompson approached that. And yeah, and so we got some mysteries here. I'm really curious to know who kidnapped Cersei. What were Hecate and Hades? What did they? What exactly was whispered between the two of them? What are they scheming? What's going on? I'm not entirely sure, but I'm looking forward to finding out what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, this is linking up Wonder Woman with Barbara Minerva, like even more so than they're kind of linked in the main DCU. But what's interesting is that they're linked just in terms of having first, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, somebody in the comments, of them first meeting as Cheetah and Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman's compassion, and realizing that Cheetah's sort of because of the cat god or whatever or whatever you want to call it, Cheetah god,
Yep.
that she's sort of stuck being the Cheetah. This is a Barbara Minerva that Wonder Woman cares deeply about before she even becomes the Cheetah. So will they become enemies, frenemies, kind of thing? It's going to be interesting to see going forward. So yeah, there's a lot of storytelling potential there for sure. All right, up next, this is in my top five. Pretty sure it's in my top five. Let me double check that. Uh, yes, it is in my top five. It's Peril of the Brutal Dark, an Ezra Cain mystery, issue number 5, from Chris Condon, Jacob Phillips handling the art and colors, and then Hassan Otsman El handling the letters. I don't think it made your top 5, right, Rocky?
I know it came in at number 8 for me, but it was good.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. Just never made the cut for me. So.
Okay. Anything else you want to add beyond that? And then I'll go.
I love, we've said this before. I mean, this was probably, ironically enough, been in my top 5 in the past. This is probably my favorite issue out of the 5. It's just action packed. It's really kick-ass action with him fighting Nazis. It's very much a sort of a darker Indiana Jones tone, which we picked up on right in the first issue. But this was like super action packed with him on the Nazi blimp and trying to get on the airplane underneath, and these robotic Nazis, robotitons chasing him, and and then your typical like almost mustache twirling villain. I mean, while it was kind of tropey and felt a little bit over the heavy-handed at times, there was something that it had a good visceral sort of like that crime noir, lots at stake kind of feel to it, and the color work really works here. You really get a sense of the gravitas of the situation, because the fate of an entire city's at stake, and this was right before World War II, where the Nazis had a fairly strong foothold in America, a stronger foothold in American politics than a lot of people who aren't familiar with American history probably would find difficult to believe. But in any event, I thought it was exciting. But I'll let you talk about it since it was in your top 5. Sorry.
Well, actually, I'm not going to say that much, probably not even as much as you. Partly because 17 books this week, and we're only on 8. We're not even halfway through yet. And it's I can really sum it up here why this makes my top 5 and what I think really really works pretty simply, honestly. Like, one of the things that Chris Condon was talking about, and Jacob Phillips as well, in relation to the series was, thinking of it as a pulp hero. And the comparison to Indiana Jones and him being an inspiration and what have you. And when you think about those great Indiana Jones films, especially the first 2, you start thinking about when it starts ramping up, when the story starts ramping up and you're getting, toward the end, and it's the action scenes with Indiana Jones, taking on the Nazis or taking on the blood cult or whatever. The action and the pacing moves so quickly, but yet you never lose sight of who Indy is. He's always true to himself and the character, and things don't always go 100% perfect. It's a bit chaotic and what have you, but the action comes nonstop. And we're at that point in this story. We're at that point in Brutal Dark, where in my mind it's playing like an Indiana Jones movie, right? Like, what a great scene! Like this, you could easily take out Ezra Cain and substitute Indiana Jones here, and you can just it makes perfect sense. With the anvil and the power, and like you said, the mustache twirling villain and the automatons and whatever, like a little bit of supernatural, a little bit of technology that's maybe beyond what was actually available at the time that this is set in, early 40s, whatever. But it all works, and you have a hero that is sympathetic but not super heroic. We saw it last issue where had to take the shot for the pain and what have you. He's got all the bumps and the bruises and the scrapes because the last couple issues have all taken place over the same night. And he's doing everything he can to save New York, and it's just fun. This is what comics is supposed to be. It's a timeless story. You don't need to know anything else going into it. The art from Jacob Phillips and the color work that he did with everything sort of being this reddish orange that sort of infuses the story with a sense of foreboding and intensity, and you feel like it's really building towards something. Like just incredible job. Everybody should be reading this, and if you're not, and you want to wait for the trade, this is going to read fantastic in a collected edition, 100%. So, as far as variant covers, there's a few. There's one in particular that I wanted to shout out. Well, actually, I guess there's just two. There's the main one by Jacob Phillips, and then Aaron Campbell has the variant. And I'm such a huge Aaron Campbell fan. This is a little different from, like, if I didn't look it up, I wouldn't have recognized it as his style because it's a little cleaner than he usually does. But man, it works beautifully. And I love the colors on it as well. So really, really cool cover, which I think I've been ordering the Jacobs Phillips covers. So I'll have to make do without that Aaron Campbell cover. But anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Justice League Unlimited number 20. This didn't make either of our top five. Mark Waid is the writer. Dan Mora and Fico Ossio are the artists. Tamara Bonvillain on colors. Ariana Mayer on letters. So, we discussed a little bit last issue. It was a final page reveal of the Brainiac Queen returning. And, she was like, where's my mother? And we speculated a little bit if she was referring to Amanda Waller. It is confirmed. It is Amanda Waller because on the first page of this, she calls out, "Where's Amanda Waller? Where's my mother?" She's just as powerful as ever, if not more so. And Lex is still a giant a-hole, as much now, maybe more than ever. So if you ever wanted to be proven right, if you're one of those people that's been criticizing the amnesty that the villains have been granted by the Justice League Unlimited, then you just need to look no further than the events of this issue. Like what Lex does, they actually have a chance to defeat the Brainiac Queen, but because Lex thinks he knows better, the arrogance and the ego of Lex Luthor, which is completely on character with Mark Waid's scripting of him, because of that, the Brainiac Queen escapes and no one has any idea where she is. Like, they're to the point that they almost may be able to turn the Brainiac Queen to their side and actually have her as a very powerful ally, because they're almost on the verge of being able to convince her that Amanda Waller has manipulated her. And then, again, Lex, thinking he knows better, engages with Warp, who he invited and gave amnesty to, even though the rest of the Justice League didn't necessarily vet Warp as somebody that they would like. He's going to teleport her into the sun. And so it's kind of a cliche, that old science fiction cliche, right? Where a sentient artificial being, it's like you try to gain its trust and you're almost there, and then it finds out you're trying to pull the plug on it, and then, oh, you were just trying to trick me and lull me into a false sense of security. But that wasn't the case. Like, Wonder Woman is actually getting through to the Brainiac Queen, but Lex ruins it all. So typical Lex being a douchebag. The art's fine, the story's fine. We're not breaking any new ground here, so that's part of the reason that it wasn't ranked as highly for me. Came in at number 10 for me. So anything to add, Rocky?
Yeah, it came in at number 10 for me as well. I will say, though, it reminds me of the plot line. It's of, I think it was Star Trek First Contact, the Next Generation First Contact, when the Borg went back in time to change the history of Earth. Because I think at the end here, I think Brainiac Queen recalibrated where Warp sent her, and I think she got sent in the past, because the next issue it says, "Welcome to Cyber Earth." So my theory is that she was sent back to the past, and she remade the Earth, and the Justice League's going to have to travel in the past. That's my theory. I might be 100% wrong, but
I completely missed it. I completely missed that. I didn't even notice the Cyber Earth thing.
Well,
but
that's
like
on the
that
back.
theory.
Yeah.
I like that theory. I like that theory a lot. That makes a lot of sense.
I
That
could be
makes a lot.
wrong,
Yeah.
but anyways, but yeah, I won't reiterate all you said. We got too many books to talk about, but I actually enjoyed this. This was an adrenaline rush of an issue, and I thought it was nice to have some the potential redemption of the Brainiac Queen, completely ruined by Lex Luthor. Oh
Yeah,
well,
behind me we have the variant, the Supergirl movie variant by Bilquis Evely, which I thank God she got to do one. I mean, she's the one that did Woman of Tomorrow,
yeah,
and that's
exactly.
just gorgeous. You're kind of cycling through them. So the Black Lightning one is Bruno Redondo. That one's great. Jonah Hex, that's the Pride variant. Actually, it's not Jonah Hex. Sorry, it's Jenny Hex. That's the Pride variant from Jessica Fong. There's one that has Batman and Killer Shark, like going eye to eye, a staring contest. It's
Yeah,
by
yeah,
Fabio Di Tomaza, which is great. The one on the screen right there is by Yasmin Flores Montanez, and then there is a Mary Marvel one by Nathan Zerdy, where Mary Marvel looks as beautiful as I've ever seen her. And then there's a Dan Mora.
yeah,
He does the regular one, and then he also has a box spot foil. So there's I don't know why, I don't know how they decide what, how, like, Brutal
yeah.
Dark has one variant cover. This one
I know.
has
Way
what,
too
two,
many.
4, 6, has 7. So yeah, I
I
don't know
know.
how they decide,
It's
but yeah,
crazy.
so many, and yeah, every one of them is awesome. So all right, up next we have Superman, Father of Tomorrow, issue number 2, Parasites, written by Kenny Porter, art by Danny Earls, colors by Nick Filardi, letters by Lucas Catoni. Again, I really enjoyed this, but just based on the strength of the week, it's only at number 8 for me. In a lot of weeks, this would be a top 5 book without question. We have a little bit of a time jump. We get a chance to see the effects of Jor-El having shared his Kryptonian technology. And once again, like, even though it's Elseworlds, even though it's a different reality outside of the main DC line, we still have Lex Luthor being a douchebag and thinking he knows best. And his contention is, let's use the Kryptonian technology to make non-lethal weapons and give them to people. Jor-El is more focused on using it for medical purposes and defensive purposes, and clean energy, and refuses to have his Kryptonian technology be used as weapons in any way, shape, or form. But what's happening is people are taking the 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 use of the Kryptonian technology, used for clean energy, used for defense, used for medical purposes, and repurposing it and turning it into lethal weapons. So Lex's point is, they're going to make the weapons anyway. Let's give them non-lethal alternatives, which I sort of get. Like, I get the point, and I don't completely disagree with Lex, and I don't completely think it's a bad idea. But Jor-El is steadfast that he does not want his Kryptonian technology used for weapons in any way, shape, or form. Where I completely disagree with Lex is because Jor-El says no, Lex just goes behind his back and does it anyway, and that's what's wrong. That's where Lex is completely wrong. So the moral quandaries of this, the moral questions are interesting. I enjoy the Danny Earls art. It is interesting, like, when I first heard, oh, Danny Earls is going to be doing interiors, because his style in interiors is very different than his style when he does covers, which it's probably because he, just for purposes of meeting the deadline, he probably can't use the style he uses for covers because it would just take too long. But his interior style does suit the story. I'm a fan of it. His storytelling is very, very strong, and overall, I really am enjoying this. So yeah, like most weeks, this would have been in my top 5. So anything to add, Rocky?
Yeah, I liked how Kenny Porter, the way he deals with Lex Luthor here, because even in this scenario, Lex Luthor finds a way to be a kind of a little bit malevolent. There's no reason why the Lex Luthor in this particular Elseworlds tale can't be an inventor in his own right. He says in this story that Lex Luthor gave up all his dreams, gave up his family legacy, gave up everything because he was inspired by this Superman. Well, why? I mean, and even if you did, why don't you invent your own stuff? Why are you beholden to Superman? If you want to create something, go create something. If you have a different sense of morals and obligations and sense of what's right and wrong, go create your own weapons. I mean, if you're so smart, I mean, so it's sad. It's another Lex Luthor. even in this iteration, he finds excuses for his own failures of character, and it's kind of and it's the tragedy of another iteration of Lex Luthor. Quick shout out! It looks like the potential of the thing that might bring down this father of tomorrow is magic, and this issue ends with the cliffhanger of John Constantine showing up. Because one of the things that the Jor-El, this Superman Father of Tomorrow, is discovering is that he's got a weakness to magic. As at the beginning of the issue, he was attacked by Clarion, the Witch Boy, and Livewire, and what have you. So kudos to Kenny Porter for thinking outside the box and introducing characters that we normally don't see in traditional Superman tales. So it's well done.
Yeah, a couple variant covers. The one behind me is by Chris Burnham. And then the one in the middle there is Gabriel Hardman, which is really fantastic. And then obviously the main cover by Danny Earls is great as well. All right, up next we've got The Flash, number 34. This made my top 5, made Rocky's top 5. Wally West in The Speed Was Power and The Speed Was Joy, part 4. Wally exploring the capabilities of his flashes of insight, being able to see the future, is really interesting. How they... how he goes to Mr. Terrific and he's trying to get more information. How is this happening? And the explanation that Ryan North comes up with, I should give the credits. It makes a lot of sense and it's really cool. And I think it really, really works. So written by Ryan North, art by Gavin Guidry, who recently signed a DC exclusive, Adriana Lucas on colors, and then lettering by Buddy Bedoin. So they end up trying to test out the theory that Mr. Terrific has by having Wally predict the weather, which is really, really cool. He's able to predict it pretty much dead on until all of a sudden there's fog when there's not supposed to be, which leads us to a cliffhanger. We find out it's not fog, it's actually steam, and we're going to see Heatwave show up. It's been quite a while. I can't remember the last time I saw Heatwave as a rogue, like as an out-and-out villain. I think due to the CW show... I can't even remember what it was called. Something of Tomorrow.
Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah. Legends of Tomorrow. That was it. Yeah. And Heatwave being on there, that they kind of weren't having him being portrayed as a villain. He's almost an anti-hero.
Yeah.
In DC Comics, so it's great to see him back as as a proper rogue here, and also the whole idea of Wally being able to predict the future, and he manages to head off an invasion from Gorilla Grodd into Keystone City or Central City. So that was fun as well, because we got this giant double page spread from Gavin Guidry with all these different iterations of think like Wally sees the future, so I'm gonna try like a choose your own adventure, right? I'll try this instead. That didn't work, I'll try this instead, whatever. So yeah, really, really fun. I'm really enjoying what Ryan North is doing. He's balancing lighthearted storytelling with storytelling that feels like it matters, and we haven't had that in Flash since Jeremy Adams. So that's one of the things that this very much has in common with the Jeremy Adams run, of which we were big fans of. So highly recommend. Definitely in my top 5. What are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Yeah, it was in my top 5 too. I just love the explanation. It never occurred to me that you could predict the future, and I almost feel stupid admitting this, but I never saw it from the way Ryan North just so effortlessly explained it. Who was the previous writer of this title? Do you remember who that writer was?
Yeah, Cy Spurrier.
Thank you. Cy Spurrier, if Cy Spurrier tried to explain what Ryan North explains in this issue, I wouldn't understand it. I know as a fact. Yeah. But I mean, Ryan North, it's so simple. Of course you can predict the future. You just need, as Mr. Terrific explains, you need more data. And if you write, and if the Flash has access to more data than anyone, and he can recall it because he's super fast, he can in 1 second he can accumulate more data than anyone on the planet. So the more data you have, the more likely you are to predict the future. Well, that just makes sense, doesn't it? And then because he's got access to the Speed Force, it's even heightened. And he just wasn't able to access that sort of like that precognition. He calls it the precog power, which he sort of activates by flexing his chest muscles or whatever, his pecs, as he says. And anyways, I just thought it was so beautifully explained, and it just makes sense. And how he knows that he trusts in his own ability and his own power and his own precog abilities. And it's going to make for some, I think, interesting storylines moving forward. And yeah, I thought it was just very well done. And yeah, kudos to Ryan North. I mean, this is a title that's been growing on me, and I still haven't read. This is really my first. I shouldn't. I've read some of his. I think he wrote Squirrel Girl for a while. Although maybe I'm. So.
I think he did, but we definitely read him. He did the Crypto miniseries.
Oh, right, that's right. So I did read that as well. But mostly it's his DC work that I'm more familiar with, to be more blunt. But anyways, I thought this was well done.
Yeah, I mean, when he says we all predict the future, and to one extent or another, that's how when you're walking, you don't walk into things because you know what would happen to that.
Yeah,
Joe Quinones on that almost looks like a Saturday Evening Post inspired, uh, with Captain Cold and Flash, and then David
yeah.
Nakayama on the variant cover that's behind me. So a couple real banger variant covers there. All right. Up next, we have Superman number 39, Prime Time, Part 4, Superboy Prime versus Infinite Crisis. Written by Joshua Williamson, art by Dan Mora, and Dan Mora deserves an Eisner for this issue alone. Colors by Alejandro Sanchez, letters by Ariana Mayer. I don't think Dan Mora. I don't even remember him ever being nominated for an Eisner for Best Artist, but he is a
Yeah.
guy that could do two monthly books. He's so fast. How has he not won an Eisner? Like I said, he definitely deserves a nomination
Oh,
based on
for
this
sure.
issue alone. And I feel like this issue of Superman deserves to be nominated for Best Single Issue. It is so fantastic. And yet, Superman is nowhere in sight. He's still missing. If you would have told me, based on the strength of the Superman stories that we've been getting, really since like sort of mid 2024, basically since um, Joshua Williamson took over Superman, the regular Superman book. So, about 3 years ago. And okay, now that Superman's going to disappear, main universe Superman's going to be nowhere to be found, but you're still going to be enjoying his books tremendously. I would not have believed you. I would not have believed that's possible. And yet, I might be enjoying this more with Superboy Prime. Now, again, Superboy Prime, I love Superboy Prime as a character. I think he's fantastic. We've talked about it a ton on here, so I won't reiterate that. But the redemption of him, what he does, how he stands up to Manchester Black, what Manchester Black does. It's brilliant. It's wonderful. It's amazing. And we get to see Superboy Prime and all these different iterations of stories because it is so meta. And Manchester Black knows that Superboy Prime knows. So we get to see him in a romance comic. We get to see him in what Superboy Prime calls an dark and gritty edgelord story. We get to see him in a version of the Superman Adventures cartoon. We get to see him in a war comic. We get to see him in all these different iterations. And what's brilliantly done, yeah, slice of life one there that Rocky's showing. But what's brilliantly done by Dan Moore is he's shifting his style. He's shifting his style to meet whatever particular story that Manchester Black is throwing Superboy Prime into. And it's brilliantly done. It's gorgeous, and eventually it gets to the point where Manchester Black has disoriented Superboy Prime so much by flipping him through all these different, like one of them looks like Sin City, one of them looks like a Silver Age science fiction story. He gets to the point where he brings him back to what Superboy Prime thinks is the actual real DC universe that he's been in for all these years, with everybody from Infinite Crisis there to call him out for all his previous bad behavior, including Kal-El. And by Kal-El, I mean Kal-L, the Superman of Earth 2, who didn't, never has, and never will have the limitations of the lesser powered Superman we know, the post-crisis Superman who, just isn't as powerful. The Kal-El Superman from Earth 2 is the first iteration of Superman that became so powerful he could move planets. He was like basically a god, and he is there, and he was the mentor for Superboy Prime, post crisis, and he was one of the ones that was in limbo with Superboy Prime when Infinite Crisis begins. And so he's being attacked by all of these heroes, or thinks he's being attacked. Superboy Prime thinks he's being attacked by all these heroes, led by Kal-El, and again they're calling him out that he has done all these terrible things and he's never going to have redemption or whatever. And the whole idea, the whole motivation behind this from Manchester Black was Manchester Black wants Superboy Prime to punch reality again and change reality to the point that Manchester Black will have a body again. Manchester Black was not killed, as it turned out, by Lex Luthor as we thought, because his psychic energy was just his consciousness was just too powerful. So yes, his body was disintegrated, but his psyche, he eventually reformed it, and now he's this sort of non-corporeal entity. But he wants his body back, and so he wants Superboy Prime to punch reality, because what will happen is when Superboy Prime punches reality and things were random, things changed randomly before, with the ability that Manchester Black has, because in a way, his mind being freed from his body has made him more powerful, in addition to him reading the mind of Superboy Prime, and he's learned about the multiverse and how Superboy Prime is aware of, the DC Comics metaverse and all that. It's leveled Manchester Black up tremendously. Now Manchester Black has the ability to almost control reality in a way, and that's how he's able to throw Superboy Prime through all these different versions of comics. So Manchester Black is trying to convince Superboy, hey, we can change things for the better. All the things that you wanted to fix before, but you were doing it in the wrong way by killing people, whatever. We can just do it by you punching reality, and I'll use my powers to make sure reality resets in such a way, and things we want to change in such a way that it will follow the path that we want. So when Superboy Prime thinks that he's back in the main DC universe and being attacked by all these people, and they won't give him a break, they won't believe that he's being redeemed, he does punch reality to try to get out of it. He panics, he's overwhelmed. It's not the greatest look. You would hope that he would have learned that final lesson that he doesn't seem to have learned. Like, hey, even if it means you have to die, Superboy Prime, that's what the main universe Superman would do. If he couldn't win, but if it meant making sure that Manchester Black doesn't return with these nearly omnipotent powers, he would sacrifice himself. Again, Superboy Prime, that's the final lesson that he doesn't seem to have learned. He does punch reality and finds out that that was just a fake out as well. He wasn't actually being attacked by Kal-El and all these heroes that Superboy Prime fought during Infinite Crisis. And it does result in Manchester Black being restored and having this incredible ability to manipulate reality. So how Superboy Prime is going to defeat him is going to be interesting. I hope that there comes a time where he does get to show that he has learned that final lesson and admit, yeah, I made a mistake. You tricked me into punching reality. It's never going to happen again. I mean, it's not that he made the mistake. It's that he needs to make sure that he learns from the mistake, right? I mean, we've all heard the cliche, you learn more from being wrong than you do from being right. But when you have a story this powerful, with great characterization, with a familiar Superman villain who's leveled up to an incredible, like, all of a sudden you got to raise Manchester Black like up there. It's probably like, in terms of Superman kind of rogues gallery, you say Darkseid, even though he's maybe even bigger than, he's more of a DC universe overall villain. But if you have anybody, one person to pick to go up against him, it's going to be Superman. So I'll put him there. Superman, then probably Lex, and I think you got to go with Manchester Black third now. He's become that powerful. So when you have that, and then you have the gorgeous art from Dan Mora shifting through all these different iterations, and even in the beginning when the heroes show up to fight Superboy Prime, and the scene with Risk punching Superboy Prime, and like his arm breaking off, like brutal, absolutely brutal. But yeah, that's what happened. Superboy Prime's like, it's not my fault. He punched me. Like, oh my God, since Superboy Prime has taken over the Superman book, I've been enjoying it more than ever.
Yeah,
and it's made my top 3, I think, every time, and been book of the week a few times. And all that being said, I think this exceeds all of them. I think this might be my favorite Joshua Williamson issue of Superboy Prime. And I said it last time we got an issue of this. It's like, man, Superman comes back and needs his own title back. That's great. Superboy Prime needs his own title. He really needs his own monthly title. So
yeah.
I don't know if Joshua Williamson will have time to write it, because he's writing Iron Man, he's writing a bunch of G.I. Joe stuff. But yeah, I really want a Superboy Prime book. Anyway,
Yeah.
no brainer top 3 for me. What do
Yeah.
you think, Rocky?
Yeah, this came in at number 5 for me. You could argue that not a heck of a lot happens in this issue, except a hell of a lot did happen, because Superboy Prime is in different different realities, and that was the fun of this issue. This was a Dan Mora issue, an absolute visual feast. My favorite 2 pages. I love classic romance comics. I got a nice little healthy collection of those. I absolutely love those 2 pages. Of course, Witchfire looks super hot. It looks gorgeous. I don't know why. Where the hell did romance comics go? Bring them back. The powers that be. Good God. All those comic books out there and so few romance comics. I just wish they'd bring them back, especially in this day and age, because there's such a war of the sexes right now, and the loneliness epidemic, and the red pill and the black pill communities. I think it would be hilarious to have a romance comic to explore all the nonsense and the craziness in today's current love-infested, dysfunctional world. But I digress. This is a great comic. My favorite line. I'm not gonna. You said so much. I won't have much to add. I will just say that my favorite line in the whole issue is the 9-panel grid where Superboy Prime says, "Oh God, I'm in a 9-panel grid, aren't I? I better keep moving before Tom King gets me."
Yeah,
That's awesome.
That was great. Yeah, that had me laughing out loud. Yeah,
yeah, that's awesome.
But you're right about that romance section, and I'm really shipping Superboy Prime and Witchfire. I really like that relationship, but it's so interesting because we talk. I scold Superboy Prime a little bit for not being willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, and he hasn't learned that lesson yet. But he really is turning over a new leaf. He has a chance to, make out with Witchfire, but he's like, I don't know if you're real. I don't know if you're self. I don't know if you're being mind controlled. And he steps back from, wanting for the right reasons. He's being a stand up guy, saying I don't want to take advantage as much as I'm attracted to you or whatever. And just wants to take a step back, and she takes that as being completely rejected, which is so romance comics, right?
Yeah,
she's like, "Oh, you rejected me." He's like, "That's not at all what he said," but boom, and then she launches him into the next reality of a comic. Yeah, just brilliantly done.
Yeah,
brilliantly done.
Good
What
stuff.
an incredible issue. All right, up next we have Justice League Dreamgirls, a Pride event, issue number 4, from writers Jadzia Axelrod and Nicole Maines. Art in this one by Rosie Camp and Brandt and Stein. Colors by Triona Farrell and Barala Kelly, with letters by Jody Troutman and Frank Sidovic. I don't want to say this ended on a whimper, but it kind of ended in. It was just kind of predictable, Galaxy goes back in, makes Dreamer aware of what's going on, that the Key's manipulating, whatever, and they save the day, and the Justice League apologize to Galaxy and give her mission leader rank so she can lead missions. And Dreamer is not offered a role, but she in the Justice League. But even had she been, she says, I'm not ready. I still need to go and kind of discover my powers on my own. So it was fine. It definitely suited what the kind of the tone of the story was, but I sort of feel like the best issue was probably like issue 2 of this. That was kind of the peak, and then it kind of coasted into its landing, but it did give a satisfactory ending. Where this book really shines for me is the backup story. So we've had backup stories throughout this run, focusing on LGBTQ characters, but in this one, it's a backup story by Klaus Janson. He wrote it. There's no color; it's black and white. But he wrote it. He illustrated it, and I don't know. Like I completely live day to day immersed in the world of comics. And it's not like Klaus Janson was hiding this, but I didn't know that Klaus Janson was a gay man.
Yeah, neither did I.
I had no idea, and so that took me down a little bit of a rabbit hole. He's done other books before. I think he's been out since like the early 2010s or mid 2010s, and maybe even earlier than that. I don't know. But this is a autobiographical story, and I just loved it. I just loved it. The vulnerability that Klaus is showing here is brave, and I think it's to be admired. It's very admirable, and beyond that, as far as just a comic story, it's illustrated wonderfully. It's paced wonderfully. I just like, if for no other reason, I want everybody should pick up this book to read this backup story. I didn't buy any of the single issues. I'm buying this issue so I can have this Klaus Janson story. I want this Klaus Janson story because I think it's very much worth reading, and it's worth having. And it reminded me a lot of ways of the
Kevin Conroy.
yeah, the Kevin Conroy story that we had a few years ago in a Batman anthology. I think it was a Pride. It was in a
Yeah.
Pride anthology as well. So
As a tribute to Kevin Conroy, I think it was. I think it was
yeah,
after he died or something, right?
yeah, but he wrote it. He wrote it,
Oh,
and then there was a tribute as well. So
okay.
yeah, again, tremendous, wonderful. It's mostly black and white, but there's a little bit of color here and there, including the final panel that you can see there that Rocky has on the screen with Klaus wearing a Superman shirt. So yeah, definitely amazing. That being said, the book itself only came in at number 17 for me. Again, it was just a little on the predictable side. So anything to add, Rocky?
Came out at number 15 for me, but I did enjoy it. And I will say this series accomplished what it was supposed to accomplish, I think. And that was, it put Galaxy more on the map for me, because now I do feel she's I do feel she's earned her place on the Justice League. Now I look forward to seeing her in the pages of Justice League Unlimited. With she's sort of paid her dues and did accomplish that along with Dreamer, and I'm looking forward. We got, even though it was a dream sequence in the last issue, we got teased with Dreamer, kissing John Kent. So I think I'll ship those two for a while. I don't think John Kent's ever going to get with Saturn Girl, especially with the new iteration of the Legion of Superheroes. So John Kent and Dreamer, I got no problem with that. I think that's cool. And Galaxy's a more interesting character than she was, having started off in, I guess, young fiction novels. And then we saw Galaxy, I think, at the pages of Hawk Girl, which I wasn't a big fan of that series. But Jaxine Axelrod here and Nicole Maines did a pretty good job with this series. And I thought this issue I thought it ended, while predictably, it ended how it should. And there was some good humor in it. And I really appreciated the character work between Green Arrow and Dreamer. I thought that worked very well. And the Klaus Janson story, isn't it something? There was actually an advisory to readers, because it does deal with, obviously, there was some harsh language and discrimination. It just goes to show that the most poignant stories are real life. And just like Kevin Conroy's story was so powerful, this one by Klaus Janson, it talks about his struggles. I mean, you felt it, and you sort of feel the struggle, and it's not surprising that you feel the plight of the LGBT community, or you feel their struggles more when the stories are true as opposed to fiction. And so it was really good to see that in this particular, to see this as a backup.
Yeah, agreed. Variant covers. There's one behind me that's by Robin Higginbottom, and then obviously the one in the middle there, the connecting cover from Phil Jimenez. And I forgot to mention for the Superman book, there's one that I wanted to call it in particular. If you really ship Witchfire and Superboy Prime, like Rocky and I do, the one behind Rocky there by an artist haven't seen, don't know that I've seen his work before. Aaron Harding is his name, and yeah, I'm gonna have to pick that up. I think I just ordered the regular Dan Mora cover, but yeah, I'm gonna have to pick up that Aaron Harding one. But yeah, the one you've got in the middle there, Sanford Green, and then there was also Art Germs got his movie variant right there, which very much looks like Millie Alcock, who plays Supergirl. So, all right, moving on. I'm a little surprised that this didn't make your top five, Rocky. It did not make my top five either, but I haven't been really enjoying it as much as you have. But Zatanna issue 3, Jamal Campbell, writer, artist, handling the colors as well, Ariana Mayer on letters. Now, all that being said, I did enjoy this issue more than issue 1 or issue 2. Just seeing Zatanna have a little more agency as the what do they call her? The Magus Supreme, or Supreme Magus.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did enjoy it, and I felt like Jamal Campbell's art was even better this time. Like his art is usually really, really strong, but I think the second issue it felt a little rushed to me, but this feels back on track. So Domains, I think, is an interesting, villain antagonist, I guess we'll say, working for the supernatural department of the DEO. So yeah, there's a lot to like here. And it feels to me like Zatanna's settling into that role of the Supreme Magus. I'm starting to buy into it a little bit more. So I like I said, I enjoyed this a lot more than the previous two issues. Yeah. So it came in at number 13 for me.
This came in at number 7 for me, and I got to tell you, it I struggled between my uh, coming in at 5, 6, and 7 for me. This could have been my fifth, sixth, or seventh, quite frankly, but I had to make a decision, so I made it. I really enjoyed this issue, and I finally got an answer to an issue. This Agent Domain, the reason why last issue, I was confused by a lot of the dialogue being covered up. I didn't understand what was going on because I know when Zatanna talks backwards, we know that she's doing magic, but last issue I was confused because all her words were blocked and I didn't know what was going on, and it ends up that this Agent Domain has the power of quietude. He's got some magical power of quietude where he can literally quiet someone's voice or eliminate someone's voice or make it so insignificant that it drowns out the voice. And of course, against Zatanna, whose voice is crucial to her magic wielding abilities, that's extremely debilitating. And she manages to defeat Agent Domains, even though he's not actually the villain per se. They did want to. She did want to rescue this Elodie character, this because she wanted to free this spirit, this muse that was tied into that was a muse for this particular singer that had died in the past. Anyways, it was very beautiful, and the illustrations are fantastic, and the story itself, it's well worth the read. Part of the joy of this comic is just looking at the illustrations and looking at all the detail. But I want to give a shout out for those who are fans of Zatanna in terms of in terms of the universe of Zatanna. Fans of the DC universe, you'll know what the multiversal map of the DC universe looks like. The multiversal map where it has originally it consists of the 52 Earths or what have you, but that classic Grant Morrison multiverse of worlds map. We basically have Zatanna. She shows us in a beautifully illustrated page that she's got her own sort of land of magic consisting of the mundane, the sea of dreams, the light, and it's shaped a lot like a map of the multiverse. But I think what Jamal Campbell has done here, he's created his own magical hierarchy or his own magical map of the DC universe. I think that's what he's done. And I'm not sure exactly what he's going to do with it, but she talks about her greatest tour, she talks about how she's visited realms of angels and demons, fortresses of mages and monsters, lands full of life and lands filled with death. And then, of course, she's got a map for herself with her own soul as its true north. So Zatanna's own soul is the true north compass on this multiversal magical map that she has, which I think is pretty cool. And I think that's going to be referenced by Jamal Campbell moving forward. It's just something for people, if you care about that sort of thing, to think about. And you never know. Great ideas are the ones that future writers use. Whether or not future writers after Jamal Campbell will come back and use that map, I don't know. But I kind of hope they do, because I think it's kind of cool, especially when, I don't know about you, Jace, but when it comes to stories of magic, sometimes the frustrating things with stories with magic is that we never know what the rules are. A lot of the endings are Duke Ek Machina, there's no rules. If the writer doesn't like it, I'll just make up another spell or something like that. Having to know what's at stake and knowing the rules of the game of magic always makes the stories, I think, a little bit more interesting when you know what the stakes are, because you know what the rules of magic are. And now we got at least a landscape and a new environment for that. I think that's pretty cool. So kudos to Jamal Campbell for doing that. And of course, his amazing art.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, no one's going to use it. That's just what no one's going to. It's too obscure. It's too wonky, whatever. And we've seen various times. Like I keep thinking back to James Tynion, who, with all due respect to Jamal Campbell, Tynion had a much bigger footprint at DC than Jamal Campbell does. And if you recall, when Wonder Woman was, part of Justice League Dark, and they were supposed to be sort of establishing exactly what you're talking about, establishing the rules of magic at DCU, and it all fell apart. Like nobody cared. Because honestly, I think for the reasons that you mentioned about Deus Ex Machina and, there's no established rules, that people have a tendency not to give as much weight to magical stories, so they don't sell as well. So, yes, they were going to, Tynion was going to map all that out and whatever, and then it just didn't happen. So I don't expect it to happen based on Zatanna. But What I do expect to happen is me buying that Carla Cohen cover, even though I'm not a huge fan of this particular Zatanna series because it's awesome. David Telesky on the variant cover behind Rocky, and then Jamal Campbell on the one that's behind me. So yeah, some banger covers. There's also one by Chrissy Zulio. There it is. There, more of an animated style, but yeah, gorgeous. And I mean, I don't disagree with you. It would be great to see some established magical rules, but then you'd still have writers that would ignore them. So it's just the
Yeah.
nature of magical characters and magical stories, which is why I'm not a big fan of them. So, all right, very curious to hear what Rocky has to say about this next book. It's Wonder Woman issue number 34, The Wonder War Part 4, from writer Tom King. Daniel Sampere on art. Bruno Redondo handles a couple of the pages 1 and 2, pages 6, and then pages, I guess, 3 through 14. We have Alejandro Sanchez on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. It's sort of the final battle, I guess, or appears to be the final battle between Wonder Woman and Matriarch, but maybe not based on the final page cliffhanger. So what'd you think, Rocky?
Yeah, I just well, this is the Wonder War Part 4. I've not been invested in this series. I've literally, it's the oddest thing. My all my I can't build up the necessary bile to even rant about this series after a while, at this point, because there's that old expression, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. But I mean, the art, the art's great, but I'm not even sure. I'm not sure that what exactly's led up to this battle and why it matters. It takes place in the future. We've gotten flashbacks, and the flashbacks have just consisted of the Matriarch killing every single member of the Justice League with her sword, because she's that powerful. This Mary Sue character. I don't feel she's earned her place. I don't think any major plot in this has been earned, and I don't find her to be a compelling villain. And I don't find her to be sympathetic. And this issue has this battle. Finally, we have this battle. Wonder Woman has acquired the God Killer sword, and she's finally battling Matriarch. And they have this battle. They talk in their usual esoteric, sort of odd ways to each other, with Wonder Woman not sounding natural in her speech. That's been that way for quite a while. It's just I don't really know what exactly it is they're fighting over. It's what I find. I will say this: a large part of this issue has to do with Green Lantern. This is a Wonder Woman tale. It's called Wonder War. And guess what the major weapon used to define this Wonder War is a Green Lantern ring. That in and of itself, I find to be really disappointing. You don't understand much about Wonder Woman mythology. If you did, why don't you focus on Wonder Woman lore? At least you got the God Killer sword, but you need a Green Lantern ring to come up with a compelling story. And now, Green Lantern fans, the ones that will be reading this title, I remember Mark Waid in the pages of World's Finest. Mark Waid, when the character, that analog character of Batman and Superman together, they combined their will and they willed the ring off Hal Jordan's finger. And I remember Mark Waid getting so much slack from fans saying that is ridiculous. That would never happen. Superman and Batman can't just that they can just will the ring to come off Hal Jordan. And then Mark Waid had this long, complicated explanation, and Mark Waid had the receipts. He thought he did anyway. Didn't convince a lot of Green Lantern fans. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be a Green Lantern expert, although I could probably purport to be if I wanted to rant about it. I'm actually curious. This ring when the Matriarch has this ring, and she kills John Stewart, and she's forced this ring on her, and ultimately in this battle with Wonder Woman ultimately sort of feigns being defeated, and then she grabs Matriarch's hand and steals the ring because, she's really because the ring is always looking for somebody with honor, and Wonder Woman sort of wills the ring off Matriarch, and it goes on her. And I really think that Tom King thought this was going to be like an epic moment. I just truly, genuinely didn't feel anything at any point in this, because I don't know what's at stake? And then Wonder Woman smashes Matriarch in the face. Okay, well, you could have done that sooner before she killed all the members of the Justice League in flashbacks and in a backstory that we're still not privy to because we still don't know what's really gone on. And then at the end, the ending is so, I thought was so, I think he's telegraphing what's happened. Wonder Woman wins at the end, but then decides she's going to impale the God Killer sword on herself and kill herself. I can't believe this. Why aren't I more excited about this? This is, oh my God, Wonder Woman. Why would you kill yourself? I think it's just to reset the time period. She's got some mythological notion with the fates being there that she can undo what's happened. And because this time period, I think that's all that's going to be done here is that time is just going to be undone by her killing herself. But this is such an emotional issue. Wonder Woman's crying. She's saying goodbye to Lizzie, and I don't feel any of it. And I want to be clear, there are issues that Tom King has written that I have that have got me in the feels with Wonder Woman. Here there are issues with Batman I thought were done. There's some issues with her with the kid with the cancer. I mean he's managed to tug at the heartstrings. He has. And he did that series with Wonder Girl, the Wonder Girl series where she basically rescues and Steve Trevor, her dad, and then there's a lot of there's very heartfelt moments between Lizzie and her father, Steve Trevor. But here I'm just not feeling it. And I think it's because the language, the manner of which Tom King has, the voice that he's given Wonder Woman, I've never been a fan of. The no thank you, I've never been a fan of. The way she speaks, she doesn't speak like anyone, like she just doesn't, I can't relate to this character. And it doesn't feel like Wonder Woman to me, the voice that he's given her. And it just doesn't work. And so for that reason, despite the great Daniel Sampere art, this is something that's just it hasn't worked for me. But I can't say this is a difficult to understand story. It's very straightforward. It's just not complex. So for straight four issues, there are people that can pick this up. If you've never read Wonder Woman before, you might really enjoy this because it has moments. It's fantastic art. It deals with her family. It has Steve Trevor. It's got all the characters you think you know. So it's all good. It's just, as a longtime fan, it just feels empty to me. And in fairness to Tom King, I'm comparing if I'm also reading another Wonder Woman title called Absolute Wonder Woman, which blows this out of the water. So I mean, that's just the way it is. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts, quite frankly, because you're usually more lenient on this title than I am. But what are your thoughts?
Well, that's because it's good. That's because I like it.
Okay.
Like I completely disagree with you that about her voice. Does it sound like a Wonder Woman I've read before? No, it doesn't sound like a Wonder Woman I've read before. But to your point about, I always call you on this because you say what a fan you are of Wonder Woman, but yet we can never find any runs of Wonder Woman that you actually like in recent memory. We got to go back to like Brian Azzarello or Greg Rucka or something like that. There are things I agree with you on. Does the matriarch feel like she's earned her spot as basically the ruler of the world? Like she's the queen of planet Earth. She's the president of the United States. She's the empress, whatever. She controls all. No, it doesn't feel earned because we don't know the story of how she rose to power. But what we do know is how formidable she is. And I appreciated her being able to not only kill a Green Lantern while he was wearing his ring, which is no small feat, but then bending the ring to her willpower to show just how incredible her willpower is. Just how I almost want to use the word petty, but that's not a strong enough word. She feels wrong. She blames the death of her mother on Wonder Woman, even though that's not, the case. Her mother being killed on Mouseman Island or whatever it was called when Wonder Woman went to rescue her. We still don't know why her mother, went crazy and went berserk in Montana or Wyoming or whatever it was. But that was the impetus. She blames Wonder Woman for that. Maybe it's just genetics. We know her father is the sovereign, so maybe it's just in the DNA, just in the genes, as it were. So yeah, I don't disagree with you, but with Tom King focusing on other things and having a finite run on this is the way he chose to tell the story. Okay, I'm not, 100, and that's why this doesn't make my top 5 because there are things about it that that I don't particularly care for. I'm not a big fan of having it narrated by these three fates for the last couple of issues. But in terms of this Wonder Woman, she's much more terse, and you know, she's much more she's much less likely to kind of explain herself, even to her family, even to Steve Trevor, and I feel like that's part of the trauma that she suffered when Steve Trevor died. So I appreciate that, and even though he's back, she still is that has become that woman of few words, and I think it works in terms of in the context of this story. Yes, I agree with you in terms of matriarch again not having been earned, and it feels like we're missing big chunks of the story. But you talk about that scene um, where Wonder Woman is able to use her willpower to take the ring off of matriarch's hand, and I thought that was an incredible scene, right? Like all throughout the story, it's been established, especially when the Guardian of the Universe comes and says, "Hey, that ring is not yours. You're not worthy. You need to give it up." And she kills the Guardian of the Universe, and she talks about how much willpower do you think that it takes to have this ring that's constantly fighting against me? It's constantly trying to leave my finger, and I've got to be exerting my will over this ring 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And when you do something that long, like you exercise that muscle, how powerful do you think that muscle has become? So how powerful has her willpower become? Like that's what a big chunk of this issue is about. And despite that incredible amount of willpower that she's built up, Wonder Woman in close proximity to the ring, her willpower is even greater. Her willpower, in a tug of war between that ring, Wonder Woman's able to take the ring and move it on to herself. I get what you're saying in terms of, a Green Lantern ring is not traditionally in the Wonder Woman mythos, and why are we using a Green Lantern ring to kind of frame the story? But I think it works. I think it works just in terms of showing, despite everything that Matriarch has done, despite everything that she's gone through, first of all, she's not worthy, like you mentioned, just because of her motivations. But despite all of that, and perhaps because of that, because of where her willpower comes from a reservoir of hate and negative emotion, as opposed to Wonder Woman's willpower, which is the will to protect and compassion and love and what have you. That she's more worthy. She's got the greater willpower, and she's able to pull that ring off of Matriarch. Despite that whole idea of possession being 9/10 of the law, you would think that Matriarch has the advantage. She's been with this ring for a long time, and she's currently got it on her finger. Seems like it would be easier to keep it on your finger than pull it off someone else's finger, but that's not the case. So I thought it was an incredibly powerful moment. I loved seeing Matriarch, despite the fact that we don't, again, really understand how she rose to power completely. But it's enough to know. I mean, maybe that story would just take too long to tell, especially if Tom King is telling it, because we know he's not exactly the best when it comes to pacing. But it's enough to know that she is in this position, and she is controlling and manipulative and cruel. Like think back to a few issues ago when she was giving that interview, and then it was interrupted, and then she was like, "Yeah, kill the reporter. Now's not the time for the story to come out. We'll just get another reporter later." Like the
Yeah.
callousness with which she um, treats other living beings. Like it was great to see her get her comeuppance. Now, why Wonder Woman's going to kill herself? Who knows? I have no idea. It seems like it could be what you're saying, to reset the timeline or what have you. But then why did she need to defeat Matriarch in order to do
Yeah.
that? Well, maybe because if Wonder Woman had used the God Killer sword to kill herself, but the Matriarch still, was conscious, had the Green Lantern ring, had all her abilities, she might have been able to stop the timeline from being reset. I mean, that's what I'm going with. I
Yeah.
guess we'll find out next issue, but I'm still really, really enjoying this. I think the stakes are there. I don't disagree with the characterization of Wonder Woman. The voice, whatever you want to call it. You mentioned it's not resonating for you, because the other thing I keep thinking is this is a Wonder Woman that's been through so much. You mentioned Matriarch killing all the other heroes. Yeah, this is a Wonder Woman that has had to hold back. She when that's the last thing she probably wanted to do, right? Like she is that compassionate hero that wants to save everyone. But in order to play the long game, in order to say I I need to not win the battles, I need to win the war. And so I can't go and save, this one person or that person or whatever, because at the end of the day, I have to make sure that it's me and Matriarch against each other, and that I defeat her and I take her ability. And then if I kill myself, then I can reset the timeline and everything will be okay. Otherwise, everybody died for no reason. And so if this is a Wonder Woman that's gone through that level of trauma, I can understand why she might be a Wonder Woman of few words. You can understand that last page where she's got the tears streaming down her face, because yeah, she has won the war, it appears, but now she's got to make a huge sacrifice. This isn't a situation where it's like, victory in Europe, right? Or victory in Japan, World War II, we won, everybody celebrate, everybody pop champagne, everybody kiss nurses in the street. That's not the case. She's won, and yet she's got to kill herself, and she doesn't know necessarily what she's going back to. She's going back to a reality in the past where Steve Trevor's not there. Lizzie's just a little baby. Who knows what the future might hold? So I'm buying it. I'm buying the stakes. The art's fantastic from Daniel Sampere. So that being said, yeah, there are some issues, especially with Matriarch feeling like she's earned her spot or whatever, and that's why it's just the fact that there were so many great books this week. It came in at number 7 for me. So there are some fantastic covers though. The one Rocky's got on the screen right now is by Annie Wu. There's one that's kind of like that one, the black, white, gold, David Nakayama. And then there's a Fatima Wad Pride variant that's behind me. And then, I don't know, do you have the Inhuck Lee variant? Where one has her back to us, and she's like, her back muscles in that are incredible.
I'm missing that one.
Yeah, she looks very powerful in that one. So anyway, up next, this one will be quick, I promise. I know we're getting a little long in the tooth here, everybody. But it's Swamp Thing 1989, issue number 3 from writer Rick Veitch. Tom Mandrake on art, Todd Klein on letters, Trish Mulvihill handling the colors. Best issue of this flashback so far, this flashback series. So it came in at 11 for me, and it honestly could have ranked higher. I really, really enjoyed this. I don't know. Again, I'm not a huge Swamp Thing fan. I wasn't reading Swamp Thing in 1989. I don't know what the story they told was after they didn't let Rick Veitch tell the story, and they didn't publish the story where it had Jesus Christ in it for fear of the religious right. But whatever story they told in 1999, it couldn't have been as good as this, because the scope of this, the epicness, the everything, like the art, the color work, the dimension of it in terms of Swamp Thing being this elemental and kind of existing at all different times in the DCU. This is just brilliantly done. It's brilliantly done. So I imagine Swamp Thing fans, especially Swamp Thing fans that were huge fans of Swamp Thing back then, are probably really digging this. And if that includes you, if anybody's listening that was reading Swamp Thing back then and knows what the actual, issues were and the stories were, is this better? Am I wrong to make that assumption that this has to be better than what came out? Because this is pretty epic. This is pretty, again, no executives at DC right now were part of what decision was made back then. And I think even the editorial, the decisions were probably made by even higher up than the DC editorial to pull that issue with Jesus Christ. Because again, he had editorial approval to do that and turned it all in and whatever. And then it must have been some executive higher up that heard about it and pulled the plug on it. So I say that to say, in a way, DC should be ashamed, but at the same time, nobody that's there now was there back then. So if anybody should be ashamed, it should be that executive that didn't allow this to be published and caved to censorship. So anyway, anything to add, Rocky?
I'll be honest. I'm not going to say I understood absolutely everything in this issue, but the concepts are pretty cool. I mean, Swamp Thing met Jesus Christ in that opening issue, and here in this issue, he's literally talking to God. And God is saying to him, do you want to become one with the source? In other words, another way of saying it, do you want to come to heaven now? Or do you want to be reincarnated? Well, he wants to be reincarnated to go and find Abby and his child. And that's what Swamp Thing wants. Meanwhile, Darkseid, the which you could consider almost like the DC version of the devil, the epitome of evil. He also wants to know where the hell, Swamp Thing is. Now, exactly why, I'm not really sure, but Metron tells Darkseid that Swamp Thing appears to have been erased from existence. Well, how can he be erased from existence? Well, it's because he's in some kind of purgatory or he's talking to God. I don't really quite get it. Meanwhile, John Constantine is doing his machinations. I don't fully... I never I never read the original. This is related to other backstory clearly that I'm just not aware of the full context of it, but it is pretty. The art it's pretty cool. Like it's clearly talking about heaven and earth and very very deeply, I think, religious and symbolic themes, and incorporating them into the villainy and the evil of the DC universe, which is pretty cool. And you can understand why, yeah, it would ruffle some feathers. And even long term, you'd forever have Jesus Christ linked to the morality of the DC universe, because there's always been talk about the hierarchy in the DC universe. Not to get off topic too much, but we have the fourth world, and then we talked about the fourth world, and above that we have the Judeo-Christian ethic, which is what and which arguably is what the Spectre was based upon, and so what is the religious foundations of the DC universe, if there is one? You can really that topic is potentially controversial, and you could really go down a rabbit hole exploring that, particularly since the 80s, had this been published. But it's an interesting topic even without it. But in any event, it is a very interesting read, and there's a lot of history both on the front and the back, talking about front and the back from the production team and what have you. So it is interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool. And Darkseid showing up in a Swamp Thing story and having it make sense. That's brilliant storytelling. All right, last book we're going to talk about in detail. It's Summer of Supergirl Special, issue number 1. The main story is written by Sophie Campbell, Belaine Ortega on art. The art's absolutely gorgeous. I especially like how Belaine draws Crush. And then we've got Triona Farrell on colors and Becca Carey handling the letters. And then there is a backup story as well. Let me get to the credits there. The backup story is written by, I think it's on the very last page here. It's by Gail Simone. Pencils by Emma Kubert. Sandra Hope on inks, and colors by Trish Movahill with letters by Ariana Mayer. So, seeing Mary Marvel and Supergirl team up and kind of become fast friends, they do have a lot of similarities. It was a very heartfelt story, and the art's gorgeous. The main story, like I said, Belaine Ortega's art is really great as well. It definitely picks up where the issue of Lobo number 4 left off. So that was fun as well, and seeing Crush was great. But yeah, just based on the strength of the week and so many books this week, this came in at number 16 for me. But I did enjoy it. Anything to add?
It came in number 12 for me. I did enjoy it. The first main story is a continuation of the story that started in Lobo number 4, and I thought it was hilarious with Supergirl and Lobo basically being put on trial. Crush showing up, Crush playing a role in that with Crypto and Dog, Lobo's pet. It was entertaining. My one little nitpick is that I don't think Crush would be attracted to a female shark. But especially since she actually we know she's got an established girlfriend on Earth, unless they since broke up. But in any event, that's a minor nitpick to Sophie Campbell. It was a good story, and I really enjoyed the art. I thought it was funny. I love seeing Crush. I'd like to see more of her. I frankly wish we would see more of Crush. I'd like to see her in one of the iterations of the Teen Titans, either the New Titans or the Teen Titans comic that we have coming out in the next month or so. But in any event, I thought it was well done. I actually my favorite though was the last story the last story, which is Who is Supergirl, written by Mark Waid, art by Cian Tormey. I thought that was very helpful to me because I've always sort of wondered. I am familiar with all the stories of Supergirl back to the Silver Age. I am, but trying to make sense of them, and in other words, my question has always been exactly how much of this is actually in continuity, like really, you know. And it appears that all of it is, and somehow in a crazy way it seems to work. It's funny, in the history of the DC universe, this much time wasn't spent on Supergirl because, of course, you can't just focus on one character in that general sort of anthology. But anyways, I thought it was very well done, and I thought it really is a tribute to Supergirl, and a very fitting tribute. And you couldn't have picked a better writer for it than Mark Waid, for all the iterations of Supergirl in the DC universe, to have a history of all of it and how it all comes together, just to show that, you know, Supergirl, Kara, she really is. She's had so much experience, and she is so different than Superman. And people really don't appreciate how different than Superman she is. And if you really look at her history in the DC universe, in the mainstream universe, and it's really epic. And then the last few pages, of course, you got advertisements for the Supergirl movie. And I'm going to just reiterate again that I don't care what anybody says. I know the box office draw is going to be, apparently it's gone down for Supergirl. I'm absolutely going to Supergirl. Steve and I are going. We're going to buy advance tickets. We're going to go, and it's going to be fun. And I want to take my daughter on the weekend on the weekend as well when it comes out. So in any event, I enjoyed this, and the covers are fantastic. I mean, some of the covers, oh my God, they're just gorgeous covers. There's definitely about 3 cover buys here for me. Gorgeous.
Yeah, I forgot about that last story by Mark Waid, and you're right. She has had I take it two ways. Yes, she's very different than Superman, but it's like sometimes, similar to Harley Quinn, they don't know what to do with her. You know, we've talked before about her similarities with Power Girl and them trying to differentiate. And I feel like that's why she's had so many different iterations and different costumes and whatever. But it is nice that they're trying to say, hey, they all count. I appreciate that. And yeah, the Cian Tormey art is fantastic as well. Yeah, in terms of covers, there's a Pablo Villalobos cover, the one that's there in the middle, which is just gorgeous, like you said. Tula Lotte, which I know you're a big fan. That's her cover there. And then the other one you had was Mahmoud Asrar, which is the one that's behind me. And then obviously the main cover, which is by Belen Ortega as well. So, all right. Well, that does it for the many, 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 many books that were out this week. I mentioned some reprints. So we've got a few different reprints this week. We've got a 4th printing of Absolute Batman 15, both of the regular main cover and a new cover. We've got a 2nd printing for for Swamp Thing 1989, #1, one we were just talking about, where Swamp Thing meets Jesus Christ. The Fury of Firestorm #1, the recent series from Jeff Lemire writing with Della Torre on art. That is getting a 2nd printing as well, with a couple of different covers. There's a new Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow coming out of issue 1 with the Bilquis Evely variant. And then Flash 31, I think I mentioned this before, Ryan North's first issue, has a couple of different covers for a 2nd printing as well. In terms of collected editions that are out this week, we've got DC's finest Fourth World, When the Gods Die trade paperback, which is collecting New Gods, 3 issues, Forever People 1 through 4, Mr. Miracle 1 through 4, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen 133 through 139, and 141 through 143. This is all written by Jack Kirby, and he's handling the pencils as well, with the legendary Vince Colletta inking him. I mean, the fact that so much of the Fourth World stuff was established in Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, of all books, because that's the book Kirby had, is incredible to me. So if you're curious, you want to learn more about the original Fourth World stuff from the legend that is Jack Kirby, Jack the King Kirby, you should pick this up. It's 560 pages for $40.
Wow.
We also have a Swamp Thing hardcover. This is the Levi Kamei Swamp Thing by Ram V with gorgeous art by Mike Perkins. It's getting an omnibus that is collecting the entirety of that story, plus the two Future State issues, as well as the Legend of Swamp Thing Halloween Special #1. So 632 pages for $100. Um, we also have a hardcover of Batman and Robin by Grant Morrison, and this is an absolute edition. And I don't mean absolute universe; I mean the absolute editions that are oversized, where the art is printed in the actual size. So 712 pages for that, $125, collecting Batman and Robin 1 through 16, Batman: The Return of Bruce Wayne 1 through 6, and Batman: The Return 1. Just in time for the film, Supergirl, the New 52 Omnibus Volume 2 hardcover, collecting the second half of that run. Um, a lot of it written by Charles Soule. We've got 968 pages for $125 if you're so inclined. Legends is getting an omnibus, and this is the Legends miniseries that introduced Amanda Waller, that introduced the current iteration of the Suicide Squad. This collects not only the 6 issues of that event series, but also all the tie-ins. So it's too many to list, but I mean, Batman, Detective Comics, Green Lantern Corps, Cosmic Boy, once for like tons. Anything that had that Legends crossover trade dress on the top. So it's 936 pages for $125. Um, I think the best thing, one of the favorite things for me about the Legend series is a lot of that. The main series was penciled by John Byrne, and it's Byrne at the peak of his abilities. Um, but yeah, we've got Len Wein, we've got John Ostrander, we've got Paul Levitz, we've got J.M. DeMatteis. I mean, that's a murderer's row of writers right there. And then obviously in the regular crossover issues, it's the regular artist for whoever was on that series. But yeah, John Byrne doing DC superheroes is always a good time. Also, Justice League of America is getting a Bronze Age omnibus. It's Volume 1. It's 856 pages, $125, and it collects adventures from the early 70s. It's Justice League of America, number 77 through 113. So Len Wein, Mike Friedrich, Denny O'Neil, gorgeous stuff. If you're so inclined to pick that up. And then we've got Absolute Flash Volume 2. This is the current Absolute Flash series from Jeff Lemire. Most of the art by Nick Robles. You can get it in hardcover or softcover this week. A.L. Kaplan does some of the art, Travis Moore as well. So if you need to get caught up on Absolute Flash, that's a good way to do so. All right, time for rankings. 17 of them to rank. So I think you went first, Rocky, so I'll fire away. At 17 for me, I have the Justice League Dream Girls, a DC Pride event #4. Coming in at 16, Summer of Supergirl Special #1. At number 15, I've got Bizarro Year None, issue #2. At 14, Harley Quinn 63. At 13, I've got Zatanna #3. Coming in at number 12, gotta find it. Gotham Academy, first year #5. At number 11, Swamp Thing 1989, issue #3. At number 10, Justice League Unlimited #20. Coming in at number 9, I've got Green Lantern #36. At 8, Superman Father of Tomorrow #2. At number 7, Wonder Woman #34. At number 6, Absolute Wonder Woman #21. At number 5, I've got Flash, issue #34. At number 4, Peril of the Brutal Dark, and Ezra Cain Mystery, issue #5. And my top 3, at number 3, I've got Detective Comics #1100. And it is interesting that they didn't do any kind of anniversary thing. Like 100, 200, 300, they usually do anniversary. But I guess when you get over 1,000, it's like,
Yeah.
what, you only do 1,000 and then what, 1,500 or whatever? Like it wasn't double sized, like nothing. So anyway, at number 2, and this was really, it was so hard for me to choose between my number 1 and number 2. And I almost went number 1s, but ultimately I decided to go with Absolute Superman #20 as my number 2 pick. And at number 1, I have Superman #39. Dan Mora better get an Eisner nomination. That's all I got to say. All right. How about you, Rocky? Fire away with your rankings.
Yeah, just a moment here. Gotta find my. You threw me off. I didn't think you'd put Superman Gotta
Oh, you
find
thought
it.
I'd go with Absolute Superman?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was like I said, it was a tough. It was a tough call. It was a tough call, but based on the strength of Dan Mora's art and just how many different styles he used was what put it over the edge for me. But man,
Yeah.
it was close. It was close.
Well, my coming in at number 17 for me is Swamp Thing 89, number 3. Uh, 16, Harley Quinn 63. Coming in at number 15, Justice League Dream Girls. 14, Gotham Academy, first year, number 5. Coming in at number 13, Superman, Father of Tomorrow, number 2. Number 12, Summer of Supergirl Special. Coming in at number 11, Wonder Woman 34. Coming in at number 10, Justice League Unlimited 20. Coming in at number 9, Bizarro Year 1, Issue 2. Coming in at number 8, The Peril of the Brutal Dark and Ezra Klein Mystery, number 5. Coming in at number 7, Zatanna, Issue 3. Coming in at number 6, Green Lantern 36. My top 5, coming in at 5, Superman 39. And number 4, Flash 34. Number 3, Detective Comics 1100. Number 2, Absolute Wonder Woman 21. And coming in at number 1 was Absolute Superman issue 20. Issue 20. I thought it was.
I'm doubly glad that I picked Superman since you still got Absolute there. You're
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
worthy. Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it, everybody. I appreciate you joining as always. Man, these if you've stuck with us to the end, give yourself a pat on the back when we do these super long ones because again, they just put out so many books this week. The fact that you guys stayed till the end, we really appreciate it. And everybody that's tuning in to the Comic Source Weekly over on the Comic Source YouTube, we really appreciate that as well. I'm just taking a quick peek at next week. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 books. 12 if you count DC Sonic, which we don't normally cover. So at least we're back down to almost 10 next week. And then San Diego Comic-Con coming up really soon. Hope to see some of you there. I'll be there doing interviews and bringing you guys the news as always. So you know what to do. Follow Rocky on YouTube. Follow the Comic Source on YouTube. Follow the Comic Source on your favorite YouTube app so you don't miss out on any of the content. That's going to do it. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.